regular board meeting of the East Penn School District Board of School Directors. Following the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like everyone to please remain standing to observe a moment of silence in honor of Linda Christman, who passed away on May 19th, 2025. Linda recently retired as a staff assistant in our library at Jefferson Elementary after 34 years of dedication to the students and staff at Jefferson. Now, all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next on our agenda, our request to comment. There are three, but before I call each individual, I'm going to read the following statement. Those of you who may be unfamiliar with public comment, speakers should feel free to express their opinion, comment, or question, and understand that this is not an interactive engagement with the board or with the administration. Please direct your correspondence to the chair. Be respectful, not engage in profane rhetoric, not disclose confidential personal information regarding staff or students, or comment on matters in violation of the law or board policy, and be mindful that others, including students, may be listening. I would request that you consider that protocol when making your comments. For the members of the audience, please also be respectful and refrain from speaking during the public comment period. With that, I will now announce each speaker and their topic. When you step up to the podium, again state your name, and you will have 3 minutes within which to speak. I will provide a 30-second warning for when your time is up. All right, our first request tonight is from Abigail Jeter and Madison Peters on the topic of Emmaus High School course changes.
Do I just start? Yeah. Okay. Good evening, members of the board and audience. My name is Abigail Jeter.
And mine is Madison Peters. We're both juniors here at Emmaus High School and here to present our findings from our research inquiry project from AP Language and Composition. We are here to advocate for more academic opportunities for underclassmen and students in general at Emmaus High School.
At its heart, every school should be for its students. This means listening to them, accommodating their needs, and offering them tools to succeed. One of the most powerful tools we have in education is access to knowledge, to opportunities, and to challenges that prepare us for the future. Today, I will be addressing the limitations of AP classes to underclassmen students. Currently, Emmaus High School only offers 4 AP classes to freshmen and sophomores that don't require prerequisites, and 3 of those are widely recognized as some of the most difficult AP courses available. This raises an important question. Why are motivated, capable underclassmen being held back from pushing themselves academically? The answer shouldn't be based on tradition or fear that students aren't ready. Readiness is not a number or a grade. Readiness is shown in curiosity, ambition, and work ethic. If a student is capable and willing to challenge themselves, shouldn't our system support that? Expanding AP course offerings to all grade levels can allow students to spread out difficult coursework over 4 years instead of cramming them into already stressful junior and senior years. If it can open doors for college credit opportunities earlier, helping students and families save money and time down the road. And most importantly, it has the power to send a message that Emmaus believes in their students, that we trust them to rise to the challenge when given the chance. It is not about pushing everyone into harder classes, it is about giving those who are ready the option to grow.
And for those who are not ready to grow fully and take on an AP class, honors classes are there for stepping stones or just as a safe place to land. However, when our school doesn't offer the wide variety of honors classes that encompasses our wide variety of kids here at Emmaus High School, that makes it difficult. The East Penn belief statement says that we believe that East Penn School District must continue to provide an excellent program that addresses the educational needs of all students in a safe and supportive environment. However, how can you say that when not all opportunities are present for kids to take the classes they need to succeed? The STEM courses here are where the opportunities lack. For example, pre-calculus, astronomy, physics 2, environmental science, and more, just to name a few. Emmaus High School offers both higher level and lower level classes. However, why not offer an in-between? For students who are not ready to take an AP class and want to achieve more than an on-level class, Emmaus needs to offer an in-between suitable for those students. Offering honors classes in more variety also allows stepping stones for those
30
students
seconds.
who want to be high achieving in AP classes. But we don't want to take the giant leap right away. Honors classes open up the limitations for many to achieve and reach big. By not offering them, Emmaus is stunting these students' growth and not letting them reach for the stars. These course changes are imperative for students to grow and succeed in Emmaus High School, and if the East Penn School District truly means what they say, then they should make it a top priority to change these courses with action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker for our request is from Ethan Amy on Emmaus High School. East Penn should invest in a fencing team or club.
Hello? Is this good audio?
You're good.
All right. Good evening, members of the school board, and thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight. My name is Ethan Amy, and I'm a junior at Emmaus High School, and I'm here to discuss why the Emmaus High School should invest in a fencing team. So, first of all, fencing team is is a sport, and like most sports, it offers an opportunity for students to achieve not only academically but also physically. We have many sports at Emmaus High School that we offer, like the soccer team, the basketball teams, and amongst many others. But the issue I have with those sports is they're very limiting, and they don't offer the sport for everybody. You have to go through trials and tests even to get onto the team, and that doesn't motivate a lot of kids to take those sports and push themselves physically. And as we know from many studies, being physically healthy helps you both mentally and physically get stronger and more academically and achieve more academically. If by not allowing these students to be able to work towards these by not allowing these students to work towards these goals, we are depriving them of their ability to achieve their strengths. Fencing allows everybody to work towards. There is no physical necessity for fencing. Anyone can do it, and anyone can get good at it. And so it breaks this barrier that people have with other sports and allows everybody to achieve and be socially equal. Also, its nickname is physical chess. And like chess, it asks a lot mentally and helps you develop your mental acuity, which is very helpful for academic courses. I personally have been fencing for a little under a year now, and I can safely say that it has definitely affected me both physically and mentally. I have felt a great change in my academics and felt like I'm at my peak of my academic career. And well, I just want that opportunity to be given to multiple people at Emmaus High School. And I believe that fencing can do this.
3 seconds.
So, yeah, the other big benefit that fencing has is that since it's not a very popular sport, many colleges look towards fencing and are like, yes, this is a sport we really want to see students do. This is something that we like to see in students. So it also not only helps people mentally and in their academics and physically, but it also allows us to give our kids the best opportunity for college goals. Thank you so much for letting me speak to you tonight, and I hope that you consider my proposal.
All right. Thank you very much for your comments. Our last request tonight is from Thomas Beakey II on May 28th security breach.
Good evening, Board. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I have some inside knowledge as my daughter was directly affected by this incident on the 28th. A former student decided that he wanted to enter the building illegally. The facts as I know them, he took a city bus to LCTI, where he hopped on the LCTI bus and returned to Emmaus High School. Upon returning to Emmaus High School, he entered the building. two serious breaches right there. He spent an hour and a half in the building, approximately, from what I'm understanding, about an hour with my daughter, which I don't approve of and I'm not happy about, and it concerns me. While he was in the building, he interacted with the security guard, Detective Blouse, Assistant Principal Brown, and faculty as well. Nobody is aware of who belongs in the building. There's no badges to get in. If they get in, they're invisible. They were speaking with the detective who's supposed to keep the kids safe. In the end, my daughter was suspended 3 days because she broke the code of conduct by not speaking out right away. When her teacher asked her if that student was a student, she said no. She went down and complied with administration, got in contact with the young man. They found out where he was. She complied. The only thing she didn't do was tell them right away. I asked Superintendent Campbell to save the footage from the bus and from the school. I'd like to see the footage of the young man and my daughter while they were in school to see what they were doing for that hour. I don't know how somebody can be in the school legally and spend an hour with one of the students. That's very concerning. We need to do better. The last line, the only line of defense is the students apparently, when they follow the code of conduct and speak if somebody's not supposed to be here. And they're young and we can't count on them to make those smart decisions. I don't know why the parents weren't notified. I don't know why the students weren't pulled aside to let them understand the gravity of this situation, what to do, how to learn from it. It was swept under the rug, and it seems like the resolution was to suspend my daughter for 3 days, and that's it. I asked in an email, which I haven't got a response to, what charges were brought on the young man. If in fact he did get in school that way, and if not, what was it and how did he get in? I don't understand how in today's day and age we can just let kids be bussed here from out of town and get in the school and then interact with faculty and security and nobody understands who they are. It's unacceptable. My daughter was suspended 3 days for breaking the code of conduct. There's a social code, I believe, that when I bring my kids here, that they're safe. And she wouldn't have made that poor decision had that young man not made the poor decision, had the bus not brought him here,
I'm sorry,
and
your
had he
time
not
is
got
up.
in.
Okay,
That's it.
all right, thank you. Okay, that concludes request to comment. Moving forward, we have the approval of minutes from the May 12th, 2025 regular board meeting. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Falegi?
Aye.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Klotz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next is the district update. Dr. Campbell.
Yes, I wanted to first start off, and I'm actually sad that one of our public speakers stepped out, but I just wanted to share that the most recent speaker who addressed an alleged incident at Emmaus High School, several building administrators have had lengthy conversations with the parent regarding the allegations. And I did respond to his email on June 2nd with an invitation to reach out so we could set up a time to talk to discuss the allegations. And so, again, certainly we will extend that invitation again. I now will jump to my official update, which, as we can all appreciate as we wrap up the 24-25 school year, which has been an outstanding one, is really my update is loaded with celebrations. And so I want to first start off by recognizing the outstanding performance of the Emmaus High School Chorale, which the weekend of May 24th, they performed at Carnegie Hall. Again, an opportunity of a lifetime for members of that select choral group at Emmaus High School. We'd also like to recognize several Emmaus High School students who attend LCTI. Recently, the following students earned the prestigious Elmer Gates Award through the Skills USA organization. And there's probably some names that are familiar to you from their success in the Skills USA competition. Congratulations to James Leap, Virginia Bujix, Dakota Miller, and Zach Osteen. We also have several students from Emmaus High School who were the Best in Show winners of the 2025 Emmaus High School Art Show that also happened the last week of May. The award winners were Jonathan Hoke, Easy Alexander, Elle Skaggs, and Noah McDonald. Congratulations also to Cece Royick. She won the LehighValleyLive.com Student Achievement Award, which was one of the 2025 Freddie Awards that was given out. So great job to Cece. We'd also like to recognize Emmaus High School student Ian Honsheen, who was announced as the 2025 Lehigh Valley Live Junior Bowler of the Year. Again, although bowling is not a PIAA sport through Emmaus High School or through PIAA sports, we still celebrate, sort of aligned to what Nathan spoke about earlier today, our students who are involved in many different athletic activities. We'd also like to recognize two Emmaus High School seniors, Gavin Germain and Andrew Kister. Those two seniors who just celebrated their graduation from Emmaus High School on Sunday had quite a weekend because on Saturday they were honored at an Eagle Court of Honor for attaining the rank of Eagle Scout. And so congratulations to both of those young men. We'd also like to congratulate Jackson Kreiner, who again is another recent grad of Emmaus High School. Yesterday, it was announced that he is the 2025 EHS Dr. Herman Corradetti Academic Hall of Fame Award inductee. I'm sorry, that was a mouthful. So congratulations to Jackson. I wanted to publicly recognize this year in the 24-25 school year, we had a total of 40 retirees from the East Penn School District. We recognized just under half of them were able to join us for our district retirement dinner, which was held last Thursday, June 5th. It was a remarkable celebration of individuals who collectively, those who were present at the retirement dinner, had over 300 years of service in public education, the majority of those in East Penn. So we appreciate all of our administrators, retirees, family members of our retirees, and Dr. Levinson, who was present for that great celebration of our retirees. Last week, June 5th, the same day as the retirement dinner, we celebrated a really special event in the district. Specifically, the members of the class of 2025 participated in the Parade of Seniors. So each of all of our seniors return wearing their cap and gown to the elementary school that they attended as an East Penn student. And our elementary buildings welcomed them with open arms. Many students were out in hallways with congratulation signs. And as our seniors paraded through the elementary schools, they got high fives from their elementary students. And it's just a great way for us to celebrate the great accomplishments of our seniors, and just a reminder that every single teacher and staff member along the way really plays a critical role in the success of our students. And it's great being for our younger students to see their peers as well who are moving on to graduation. And finally, speaking of graduation, congratulations to the Emmaus High School class of 2025 who celebrated their graduation yesterday afternoon at the PPL Center. Their journey at Emmaus High School and the district was commemorated with what was really a top-notch ceremony. We appreciate the meaningful speeches from our student speakers, the performances by our student ensembles, our guidance counselors, our faculty, administrators, as well as the school board who was able to celebrate. A special thank you to Mrs. Garriello, our Emmaus High School principal, and Mrs. Oken, who's our director of activities, who helped to coordinate the ceremony and ensure that it really is dignified and memorable for the 711 graduates we had and the thousands of guests that were there to celebrate with us. So again, best of luck to our class of 2025, and we can't wait to see the great things that you will continue to experience as you leave East Penn and Emmaus High School, and we couldn't be more proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Dr. Campbell. Any comments or questions from the board? Ms. Klotz?
So I actually don't see the students here, but I wanted to say thank you to the students who have come out and spoke. Actually, you were here. I'm sorry, I didn't see you right away. So thank you so much for yes, you. Yes. Yes, Ethan, right? Yes. Thank you so much for speaking. It takes a lot of nerve and courage to come up and speak in front of a good deal of people. So thank you for your passion and for your information. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Klotz. Ms. Ford?
I also wanted to just say kudos to the students that came out tonight. And Ethan, fencing is amazing. And I hope at the very least, maybe consider starting a club. I don't know if there's a fencing club, but it sounds like a good place to start. Also, kudos to all of the administrators and teachers and everyone who made the graduation ceremony amazing. And I have to shout out the band because I don't know how they do it, but to learn all of the military marches is so impressive to me. And so I just wanted to give them a shout out because that takes a lot for musicians. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ford. Any other comments? Ms. Bowman?
Yes, similar thoughts. You know, I don't know what it is about this crop of students that are in AP Lang, but these are probably the most persuasive speeches that I've ever heard at school board, all of them in total. I was particularly really moved by the request for fencing for maybe a different reason that wasn't stated during the talk, but we've been trying to create a more welcoming atmosphere at the high school, and sometimes you just have to find the thing that turns a kid on. And if someone comes to the high school and gets involved in fencing, and that's what makes them want to come to school, that's what it's all about. So I hope that the high school administration can work with that student. It really seems like low-hanging fruit to me. And if it comes to the board for a vote, I'd be happy to vote yes.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Other comments? Okay, I'd just like to add on again, congratulations to the class of 2025. It was an honor and a pleasure to participate in yesterday's ceremony. I know my hand got tired shaking hands with half the class. I'm sure Dr. Campbell might feel the same way. But it's always a pleasure to to see the happiness and overcome them as they approach to get their diploma cover. Also, just like to then congratulate our recent crop of retirees. That was an enjoyable retirement dinner, and again, it's something that I look forward to attending each year. Okay, we'll now move on to our next agenda item, which is related to the East Penn Facilities Plan and the K-8 Realignment Financial Plan presentation. I'll now turn things over to the administration to introduce.
If we could just cue up the presentation. All right, good evening. We are excited to provide the board and community with our next step in the K-8 realignment plan. I wanted to just briefly start off as a reminder and share the work, the public presentations that our team has made throughout the 24-25 school year regarding that K-8 realignment. Specifically, in October of 2024, we provided an overview of the realignment plan. We reviewed the timeline for the projects, and we gave a prelude of the programmatic planning that would be coming and gave an overview of some of that work that had already begun. Then in April 2025, we reviewed in detail the K-4, 5, 6, and the 7, 8 programs that were being recommended as a result of almost a year's worth of committee and stakeholder involvement. And last month, May of 2025, Breslin Architects shared the schematic designs for Eyre and Lower Macungie Middle School, each of which respectively Eyre will be the 5-6 building, Lower Macungie Middle School is projected to be the home for the 7-8 building. And so this evening, we will review the financial plan to support the realignment projects. I just want to assure and really clarify for the board and the community that tonight's presentation is informational only. The board will take action on the schematic design and that plan, the financial plan to support it, at a future board meeting. Tentatively, board action is scheduled for June 23rd, but we're really looking to see the discussion or questions that occur tonight to make a decision as to when that recommendation, when that board action might happen. Tonight's presentation will begin with Mike Sander, who's the project manager from CHA. That's the construction, they are our construction management partners on this project. We're also fortunate to have Jamie Lynch with us as well. Mr. Sander will review the costs associated with the schematic design that was reviewed in our last meeting. And then we will have members of our financial management team. Specifically, we have Ben Kappenstein and Scott Shearer from Public Financial Management. We also have Ali Maki from Raymond James, and they will review the long-range financial plan to support the K-8 realignment project. So it will be one comprehensive plan that will be shared by both CHA, PFM, and Raymond James. And so at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Mike Sander from CHA.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me this evening. It's an honor to speak in front of everybody. So we will short presentation on our part, and we'll roll right into it. So that was an excellent segue into that. Back a little bit better. Excellent segue into what we were talking about. So we're going to dive into the schematic budget here for the proposed projects at Lower Macungie and then Eyre Middle School. So as we came up last time, we do have our preliminary budget that's broken down into numerous parts consisting of the actual hard costs, the construction costs themselves associated with the building, and then into what is the soft costs associated with the stuff behind the scenes, design fees, township approvals, third party, all that great stuff. And accompanying these and moving together is the district's capital improvement plan that you guys have been working on for numerous years here, and we're going to talk about how that kind of gets married together as we move forward into these projects as a larger picture. So really to break down into it, we're going to start actually with the hard costs, the actual physical costs of these projects. So we have, again, two different schools, really. So Eyre itself is focused on...
Excuse us, could you move a little closer
forward?
to the mic?
Is it better?
Yeah.
Sorry about that. It sounds like an echo right here to me,
No,
so I didn't want to...
That's perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So two separate kind of projects that are tied together in one. Eyre is more of a renovation project, where Lower Macungie is a very large-scale addition and has a smaller inside renovation scope itself. So as you can see up there, the tale of two tapes kind of separates the sizes of the spaces. As we move down, each one has different needs itself. So Lower Macungie is a larger site project where there's a lot of work done with the team figuring out how to maximize and utilize the existing features of that site itself. It is a very complicated site. It may not seem that way, but it is. And then Eyre itself, there's a lot of things going on with neighboring schools behind that and how we access that site. So kind of a tale of two tapes as we work through it. And one of the big things hanging out then, again, at Lower Macungie is we are dealing then with an intersection and how we handle those state roads associated with what occurs along them. So as we wrap through our kind of our hard costs here associated with them, as we move down, we do have two contingencies that we're working on right now, one design and bidding, and then again a phasing. So both of these projects deal with how we have associated with an occupied building and how parts and pieces can be done to accommodate that. We really kind of dive into those details. So then accompany these hard costs, we dive into the soft costs. We work with the administrators and the design team and really dive into the parts behind the scenes that add a large scale to the project themselves, as much as the design fees are, the construction management fees. We have third-party testing, we have construction testing, we have site surveys, we have township fees and escrows, we have land management, and all these things really get built together into the project so that we make sure we give a total picture to the district itself. So this is really, just for Clarence, we have this broken down into 2 slides. It's a continuation, and the next one is, again, still parts of the soft cost itself. So as we move forward down into our next one, we really dives into some of the parts and pieces we work hand in hand with the administration on that function in the building itself, such as technology. So how we have new items in the building, new furniture, new cleaning devices, the telephones, the switches, the servers, all of these things that are used and needed in the new educational spaces and the support spaces that accompany them, all get built into our soft costs. So we account for them, we carry those on, and we make sure that everybody's aware of them moving through the entire project. And then again, as we go down, as you're working your way down, you can see a total summation of what is the soft cost, projected soft cost currently for both Ayer and Lower Macungie based on the current schematic design. Then they're accompanied with the hard costs that we saw on the previous page to give us what is a total projected project cost, and then we're working as we marry that together with the district's ongoing capital improvement plans and how they overlap and build as to one. So it was kind of a down and dirty overview that we have, bringing us down to the grand total that we guys talked about in the previous month. So with that, I want to offer the time and opportunity for any questions, comments, or concerns.
Comments, questions from the board? Ms. Klotz?
So we all know that tariffs are a big deal right now. I don't see an allowance for tariffs. What is there an allowance for tariffs?
So that is an excellent question. We unfortunately get to field that a lot in today's climate and what things are going on. So there's a ton of chatter about it. We really haven't any tangible results on any of our projects ongoing on what's being affected. Everything's projected and what it is. And the layman's answer is that's why we continue to carry contingencies for these purposes, something that's unforeseen. It really starts with sound design documents to try to alleviate any of these issues, but it is a giant unknown that we are addressing, and the use of contingencies is a key part of that.
So thank you for that. However, I work in insurance, and I have been speaking with different insurance vendors, we'll just put it that way, who actually deal with replacement costs, and they work with material costs all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So they said that typically 10% is built into projects to deal with the tariffs. So why isn't that done here?
So we have actual multiple contingencies that do add up into it. So the first part would be our design and our phasing contingency, and then as we work down into it, those were 2 separate ones. Then we have an actual construction hard cost contingency itself. So currently in the upper part, that deals with any kind of changes in scope, how that's affected in the current market as things may change. And then we hope to get to a spot when we're going out to bid with sound construction documents that we have a more tangible approach or understanding of what's going to be affected.
Okay, so but for right now, you're saying that there isn't an actual, like you don't put 10% aside, like right now you're working with 2% or so?
Sure. So we'd have a combination of things built together into it. There is not a designated line item that we.
Okay, and that 2 and 3%, just again to clarify, has nothing to do with tariffs, so,
Yeah.
Okay.
We have.
thank you.
All right, additional, Mr. Falagi?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. The preliminary estimated combined project costs, I guess that's on 7, of the 94,787,000. What's that plus the 20,128,980 in capital?
So that is your ongoing capital plan that there's carried in the budget. So there's an intermingle of some of the topics in there. So for an example, Lower Macungie is mostly an addition. There are other needs of the building that were identified and budgeted as part of that. So you're going to have an opportunity to incur those in economy of scales and take those out as part of the project. So there is additional behind the scenes and parts of the building that aren't touched, then that's what we're carrying those values for.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for the question. Additional comment, Ms. Moman?
Thank you for getting down to this level of detail. Even apparently you're waiting for the number, but even down to the kilns in the building. I guess as a board member, trying to wrap my mind around these costs, I'd like to see it a little more itemized in terms of the construction itself. Like what are the extra sports fields going to cost? What is the extra gym going to cost? Things like that. Is there a way to get that?
Yeah, we can work on that. So currently as a schematic design, we start on a step-by-step basis, and then we'll dive into it on a very much further detail, line by line, item by item, per
Okay.
item.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Jankowski.
So just to follow up on Ms. Klotz's question, for a project like this, do you, and based on other projects you're doing, I mean, do you see a real impact from tariffs on this type of a project?
Currently,
Yeah.
we haven't. We haven't currently. There's been a lot of rumblings, but we have not.
And the
currently seen
materials
anything.
you're using and that, so, I mean,
This would be traditional as far as the materials proposed, if that's what you mean?
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and again, to bounce off what Ms. Bowman said, I appreciate the level of detail. Obviously, one of the biggest drivers of costs once you get the project budget in place is change orders. One thing that, I can speak for myself, one thing that I am hopeful and I can say will not go over too well with this board is being cut by 1,000 knives with change orders. How confident are you? How liberal or conservative were you with this budget to account? I mean, we know what we're doing. Obviously, no project is completely black and white, but for a project of this scope, based on the sites, based on the work that's been done thus far in the design, I mean, where do you see change orders arising in the event they are presented?
Sure. Well, it's an excellent question. It's a question that arises all the time when you're engaged in large-scale construction projects, whether it's renovations or new buildings themselves. And it really starts kind of behind the scenes with the selection of an excellent design team. You have a great team here. You have great team support by the administrators, and it works together to try to make clear, concise construction documents to help alleviate that. And then what happens is if things arise, we undercover things or things are unknown or unforeseen, we make sure it's dealt with immediately. And that's kind of the best approach to have it, is clear and concise, make sure things are dealt, and make sure if anything does occur, it could be a value add to the project than a deterioration to it.
My only admonition is that, we are hopeful that you are doing your best not to come to us with and seeing this cost increase because of that. We expect the diligence to have been done in establishing these baseline budgets. So thank you for your, thank you.
Ms. Klotz?
So just to clarify with the tariffs, about 5 days ago, steel and aluminum, a tariff was, I believe it was 50% tariff was just put on 5 days ago for steel and aluminum, like I just said. So you wouldn't have seen any increase due to tariffs right now. So just to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. Additional comments? Okay, well, I appreciate those questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Ben Kappenstein, PFM Financial Advisors. Thanks for having me. So we just talked about the project costs, and now we'll get into how to pay for it. What does it mean for the district financially as a whole? So we're going to dig into some analysis here. I think we'll have questions at the end, and I know there was a lot of pre-submitted questions, so we'll be ready to answer those as well. So just to get into the introduction, so the district does a 5-year projection model on its financials, which is a good thing because not all districts do, so that's a good starting place. Along with this big project, the district wanted to update its 5-year financial plan to make sure that it was financially viable and that the district could have adequate reserves in the future and handle all the other costs that come along with running a school district on top of the realignment plan. So they asked PFM to kind of take a look at their projections and maybe do some additional analysis and look for some different avenues that could make it a more viable plan financially. So that's what we're going to discuss here tonight. The district came up with a base case projection, and this base case projection includes $95 million that we just discussed for the project. It also includes a couple other things. It includes an $8 million annual transfer to the capital fund, which is for keeping up with your current buildings and spending just money on capital, which is good that you're looking to do that. That is included in the base case projection. Funding all of the district's future priorities along with the realignment program are included in this projection. And 4% growth rate for salaries, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, why that's important. Importantly highlighted there, you'll see that under this base case scenario, the district would be projected to run out of money by 2031. So clearly not a viable option without doing some other maneuvers, some other cutting things that we can think about. So that's what we kind of got brought in to do, to think about different ways that we could manage this. If you look at that chart there, a lot of what we're going to talk about looks at fund balance. And your fund balance is the measurement of the cash that you have on hand for emergency situations, other things that come up. So if you look at that top chart there, you can see historically where your fund balance was. But if you go to 2026, currently you sit at about $34 million of fund balance. And we measure it as a percentage of total revenues. So right now you're sitting in the budget at about 18% of total revenues. Pretty strong financially. You'll see where that ranks on a Moody's credit rating score on the next slide here, but in a good spot. Unfortunately, you'll see that in the base case, as you go to the right and you get out to 2031, that deteriorates pretty quickly. But that's the summary of it. If you look below, you can see it's pretty small, but there's a summary of those projected financials under the base case. So again, that's just the base case. We talked about Moody's credit rating. So right now you're at 18%. Moody's gives different scores for different percent of total revenues. AAA is 25%, AA is 17.5, A is 10, and BAA is 5. So currently you rank at the second highest score with that 18%. Again, in a pretty comfortable position, not unlike, school districts that are like you. Unfortunately, the blue line, again, that's that same base case projection you saw on the last page. It does go down pretty quickly and eventually goes negative. So just giving some other data points here. Salaries, wages, employee expenses are a big part of any school district budget. You're not unique here. Every school district in Pennsylvania and the nation, it's their number one cost. But just to kind of point it out here, it does represent 69% of your total 2026 budget. That shouldn't be a surprise. But the point here is that if you're making big structural financial changes, you're most likely going to have to do it with some kind of employee expenses because it makes up 70% of your budget. Some other things that are driving your projections relating to employees are the compensation, the projected growth of the expenses of employees. So you'll see a chart here with two different lines. The blue line is the projected personnel expense growth rate that's in the projections. And you can see that's higher than the red line there, which represents your projected Act 1 index, which is the maximum that you can raise your taxes to each year. Now that's projected based on figures provided by the state. But you can see that the expenses are growing faster than the revenues, which is causing a negative drag on your on your financial projections. Okay, so we're going to get into the scenarios that we've looked at so far, and we've looked at a lot. So we've been going back and forth with Bob and the district here, over the last couple months to kind of come up with a plan that will work. So the first three scenarios that we looked at was basically us looking at the financials without talking to Bob at all and digging in and saying, okay, here's the financial projections. What could we do to fix these and make it look better in the future? It turns out that scenarios 1, 2, and 3 are not really doable, but we list them here anyway. So scenario 1, we looked at lowering that $8 million to 4, but we decided that's not possible. The district has a lot of buildings, a lot of capital needs. $4 million is just not enough. So scenario 1 wasn't viable. Scenario 2, we looked at abandoning the district priorities, and those are what comes along, the staffing and programming costs that come along with the realignment. Problem is, if you do the realignment and then you don't have the staff costs, there's no point to do the realignment. So that was not viable as well. And then the third scenario, we just looked at cutting $7 million a year from somewhere. Turns out that's not really feasible either. So Bob came back to us and said, what if we look at these next three scenarios? And the key to these scenarios was lowering the capital fund transfer from $8 to $6.5 million. And then also, each of these has a different reduction of spending for the reconfiguration plan. So scenario 4 goes from 6.3 to 3.8. Scenario 5 goes to 6.3 to 3.4. And scenario 6, 6.3 to 2.8. So there's two graphs here. The top graph just shows the ones that we deemed not feasible. So you can see that this graph represents the fund balance as a percentage of total revenues. The top three would have worked if they were feasible financially, but they're not operationally. And if you look at the bottom chart, scenarios 4, 5, and 6 kind of get too low. They get down to 4 or 5% of total fund balance at the end of the projection period, which is pretty low, and a school district of this size wouldn't really want to get that low. So we came up with a new scenario, which is that blue line there. That's the one we're going to dig into here tonight. That scenario gets you to about a 15% fund balance in 2031. So there's a couple keys to this new scenario. In order to make it work, number one is the willingness of the board to raise taxes to the index every year for the foreseeable future, which we realize, is a tough thing to hear. But in order for this plan to financially work, that's what's required in this projection. The other thing is dropping that $8 million to $6.5 million. And then importantly, funding those via borrowings instead of cash funding. We'll talk about that in a little bit later. And then we also, number 3, is to reduce staffing for new staff to that middle option, which is $6.3 to $3.4 million. So because we're talking about raising to the index every year, we wanted to look at historically, and this is actually Bob's chart, of where the district has raised, and actually only 3 out of the last 11 years the district has raised to the index. And again, that's not a bad thing. It's just that the historical is going to be a little bit different than the future if you decide to take on, raising to the index every year. So this is the effect of the new scenario on the financials. And again, it's kind of that same chart you saw before. The base case is that dotted black line that goes negative. The blue line is the new scenario that ends at 15% fund balance or $35 million, which is still a strong balance. So financially, this new scenario is viable. And then the question comes up, okay, what if we don't raise to the index? So we do the project, but a future board decides we're not going to raise taxes to the index. What could happen? So we did a scenario where we only raised to half of the Act 1 index. You can see very quickly what happens. It kind of tails off there and becomes unsustainable after a couple years because the revenue's not there to pay for the debt service with the projects. And then what's it mean for an average homeowner in the school district? Using an assessed value of about $215,000, the effect annually on a homeowner is anywhere from about $156 to $170 annually. These numbers are pretty small here. These are the detailed projections of the new scenario. But just wanted to point out here a couple things. The top is the tax increases, the millage rates, if you're interested in that. The bottom is kind of the financial projections that come off of this, and they'll match up to the graphs that you saw on the previous pages. But if you take a look at the highlighted portion down in the bottom right, that's kind of what I focus on. That's the fund balance. So there's where you can see the fund balance kind of staying at a manageable level and ending at $35 million. So then a bunch of questions, great questions came in, by the way, And obviously, you guys had reviewed this beforehand, which I think is great. Based on some of the questions, we decided to run a few more pieces of analysis. So the first one was, what if the price of the project drops $10 million, 95 to 85? What's that do? The answer is, unfortunately, it doesn't do too much. Every little bit does help, but it would put you in a place where you'd be at about 16% fund balance instead of 15. So again, it's helpful, but it doesn't totally change the game. This is the detailed projections of that. And then the next question was, okay, what if you don't do the project and you do the base case projections based off your current budget in 26? Importantly, this does include that $8 million of annual capital funding. So if you do all that and you look in the bottom right here, you actually drop down to 10% fund balance by the end of the projection period. A lot of that's driven by that capital spending. $8 million a year really eats into your fund balance. It's good that you're spending money on your assets, but it does kind of hurt the budget. And then another question was, what if we only raise to 75% of the Act 1 index? So we ran that scenario as well. Everything else stays the same. And then if you look in the bottom right here, this one gets you down to 8% fund balance. So it would work and it would be viable, but you'd be at a place where you're getting pretty low, and it's probably too low for a school district of your size. I think Allie's going to talk about the millage study here.
Thank you. I'm Allie Mackey from Raymond James, and I'm just going to step you through the millage study that was included in the presentation. This is really to just isolate the borrowing-related pieces, absent any of the operational changes that Ben just discussed, so that you can see the impact of just the realignment project, the debt associated with it, along with borrowing for the PAYGO maintenance that you're currently funding, that $8 million that we're suggesting to drop down to 6.5. So if you look here, I know these numbers are teeny tiny, and I apologize for that. But in column 2, this is the outstanding net debt service of the district. So this is the district's debt as it currently stands today, how much you owe on bond issues that you already have outstanding if you do nothing going forward. Columns 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 are the proposed new borrowings that would be required to both fund the realignment project and to fund the next 5 years worth of pay-as-you-go capital maintenance projects that you're currently funding out of fund balance. In column 8 then, that is the total that you would need to fund all of that debt service associated with those two things. So you can see here that we would need to get up for debt service alone to a run rate of roughly $8.6 million. The good part related to that is if we remove that $8 million capital spend from the PAYGO, we can kind of shift it to debt service to help cover some of that debt service expense going forward that we're going to need. Columns 10 and 11 are the staffing requirement for the new K through 8 realignment project, and 11 is the new transportation cost that would be required going forward. So we're trying to give you a holistic view here of the project itself, the debt service, plus the operational costs associated with the realignment. So in column 12, that's where you get that total that includes everything. So you can see there that we have to get up to roughly about $14.3 million dedicated in the debt service budget to fund all of those kind of pieces to the puzzle. Column 13 then is that equivalent and how you phase it in mills. So we're basically saying that over the next 8 years, you will need to fund about 0.22 mills for debt service annually. Or if you want to look at that as a percentage of your Act 1 index, it's roughly, a little over 1%, 1.05, 1.1% annually for each one of those years. You'll see there the blue highlight in column 16. That's where we are assuming if you would borrow for those PAYGO kind of capital projects, that you would then move that amount over to your debt service budget to help cover some of the costs here associated with this project, because you'd be borrowing for that purpose now. So you wouldn't need that line item associated anymore for the PAYGO capital side of the house. The other piece to this is column 9, which is called interest earnings and school district reserves. That's basically amounts that you already have held in a capital fund to help fund the project, and what that does is allow you then to phase in this debt service over a longer period of time. Obviously, you're going to be onboarding a lot of debt quickly. We have to work within the Act 1 index. You have other budgetary pressures. We're not going to be able to raise taxes to 14 million on day one. It's going to be a long process to do that. And so using those capital funds just allows us to spread that over multiple years, in this case, 8 years. And I will stop there, and I think we're going to take questions as a group.
Okay, thank you for that information. Who'd like to start? Mr. Jankowski?
So what is the impact on cost of debt by dropping from a AA to an A, or even going down to a BAA under these scenarios?
So,
Could you come
everybody
in?
hear that? Okay. So traditionally in the market today, we're talking 10 to 15 basis points per rating notch. So about 0.1 to 0.15% for each notch that you go below where you currently are.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. I mean, it's not the end of the world if you get downgraded credit rating wise, but it does cost you more in interest over time, which is real numbers. But it's, some people think you get downgraded or you have a lower credit rating and you can't borrow money. That's not the case, right? It's just that you'll borrow at a little bit higher interest rates.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I can't see you. Could you go to the podium?
Sure.
Could you guys go to the podium?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then are there any other financial options that you looked at as a mechanism to fund this? Like a lower cost of debt? I mean, is there, or is this really the most feasible if we want to do what?
If you want to do this project at the 95 million, I don't think there's many other, I mean, outside of grants that maybe you could get outside of kind of our purview, for debt funding, I think this was the most efficient plan that we've come up with. And I don't think this was the first plan. I mean, we've been working on, tailoring this and going through the projections and seeing what works. So I think what's before you is kind of the tailored plan that works the best.
And then this is more for you guys. So reducing the available funding for salaries for purposes of this project, what's that impact on, where we are and what the support that we would have for the new buildings? Or is that
What are we cutting
intended to
for
be
the 6.3 to the cut to the
Yeah.
3.4? What are we cutting from it? I think is probably the question.
Oh, was that your question
Yeah.
related to staffing?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So, I mean, I appreciate the question. I want to first remember as well that the board had asked when we outlined the staffing priorities for the realignment, there was also a request from the board that we include potential positions that we envisioned would be priorities for the organization in the foreseeable future, not just related to the realignment. So when we talk about reducing the staffing from where we started, many of those positions, particularly in the out years, are perhaps positions that we projected that aren't directly related to the realignment. Positions that we had originally envisioned for the realignment that at this point in time, we have said we could live without those positions. We are very confident that they don't compromise the integrity of the program that we outlined in earlier this year in February in terms of the K-4 program, the 5-6 program, the 7-8 program. So examples of those positions would be the addition of student advisors at the 5-6 building. We currently have some student advisors in our buildings. We have some that would remain at the 7-8 level. Primarily, they would remain at the secondary level. Examples of positions that we had proposed then was also to add some student advisors to support the K-4 level, not necessarily at every building, but again, those would be positions that we didn't perceive to be critical to fulfilling the vision or the programmatic vision that was outlined. Student advisors are ones. We had also student supports coordinators to increase those. We currently have one at the elementary level. There was a proposal to increase more again at the K-4 level. So those would be positions that we, again, envision that we could, in the immediate time, still fulfill the vision of the realignment and certainly continue to monitor the financial landscape of the organization to determine when and if there is a point that we can continue to look at building in some of those supports, not just related to the realignment, but related to the overall needs of the organization.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question. So, we got a bit of a scare, at the prior meeting, looking at the early 30s and the fund balance being in the red. Obviously, no one wants that. Based on your experience and what you've seen with other schools that you maybe work for, or how do we compare with the financial health based on what you're seeing today? So it's kind of a two-part. How does that compare? Obviously, prices are going to go up. 90% of our expenses are pretty much fixed. So we're with or without this project, we're going to be in a position where we need that additional $8 million or so funding to keep the fund balance in the black. How does that compare to what you're seeing with other districts? Is that atypical? Or is there anything concerning from what you're seeing? B, with the construction project that that we've approved, what you've laid out here, how does that compare with maybe other projects like this that you've seen, with respect to the millage rates, a consistent, steady increase to keep the funding going?
Very
benchmark
similar.
us compared for what you've seen.
Very similar to other districts. Everybody's going through tight budgets. Not everybody. A lot of districts are going through tight budgets, especially districts that have big projects. So we have a lot of districts that are building new schools or renovating their current schools for numbers in north of what we're talking about here, or around this area. So very similar. As far as your fund balance, where it's at now, and projected, you're right in the middle of the pack. I mean, good fund balance, $35 million is strong. I would say you're in a strong, healthy financial position right now. You're rated AA2, which is a great rating. So yeah, everything is good. I think the project, we looked at your debt currently, which you basically have, you have $5 million of debt currently outstanding, which is not much. Your debt compared to other districts of your size, and that we compared you to, they all obviously have a lot more debt, right? Because they have other buildings. So you're kind of at a different cycle than them. You're now thinking about starting to bring on more debt and do the projects. They may have already done that, some of the other ones that we looked at, but I mean, you're very similar to the other districts that we're talking to now.
So you think a 15% fund balance, an A rating is still was healthy and.
Yeah, and to be clear, the A rating is a score. It represents 20% of the
Right.
total rating. So there's other things, your economic factors, your enrollment, all that kind of stuff is the other 80%. But this 20%, 15% fund balance at that level is strong. So yes.
Well, thank you all for the level of detail and analysis you
Thank you.
provided us.
And I will say, from a funding perspective, everybody that's taking on a project of this caliber is phasing the debt service in over a 5, 6, 7 year period. Under Act 1, you just can't do it any other way. So this is not dissimilar to almost everybody who's doing a major project right now.
That just made me think too. I mean, obviously raising to the Act 1 index is, not everybody wants to do that. We understand that. In the future, these are projections. All these numbers are total projections. Each line item has a different growth rate that we're using. It's going to come in different, right? So there's a chance that things come in better than we're anticipating right now. I'd like to think that we're semi-conservative in our analysis and our projections here, hopefully coming in a little bit better potentially in the future, which could give you the ability to maybe do some of those additional hirings or things like that. But I think it's best to plan in a more conservative approach. I wouldn't say there's a ton of what I'll call fluff and conservativeness, but there's definitely a little bit in here, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Who's next? Ms. Ford.
Sure. Again, thank you for the presentation and the information, the detailed information. Just something that you said just sparked a thought in my mind. When you mentioned about grants, and I know in the state of Pennsylvania, school districts are allowed to receive gifts and endowments. And so I guess my question is, I know for example, in universities, they have actual employees who seek out and go after gifts and endowments. And I was just wondering, administratively, has anyone thought about those opportunities? It's a little outside of the box, but still always a viable option.
I'll let the district answer specifically for here, but I know in other districts, they'll have foundations. I think they're 501c3s that are set up that do exactly what you're saying. So it's a board of volunteers maybe that's going after money, especially for big projects when they come up. It's a big time to ask for money. So, I think that would be a fine idea. I don't know if the district's thought about that or is thinking about that, but that does happen.
I mean, it's not something we've considered at this point.
Okay.
Ms. Klotz.
I'll echo everyone else. Thank you so much for the presentation, and just the level of detail is wonderful. I have quite a few concerns about moving forward with this. So $100 million is a huge expense for this community. Does this include the high school? I believe that it does not. So this is specifically for the 5, 6, and 7, 8, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out how are we going to pay for this and then in the future pay for the high school and, for any renovations, construction going on there. I don't see how that's possible in the foreseeable future. Raising taxes to the index or, as you said, foreseeable future, that makes me extremely nervous. Emmaus Borough just took a rate increase of 26%, or is taking, 26%. So on top of that, they would have to absorb this as well. So I think that's a lot to ask for the community, not even including the high school, even with that. So I have concerns about that. You know what, we'll just start there.
I apologize, was that a question?
I'm actually just stating concerns
Was it
that
a,
I have.
I just want to be sure that, was it a
Yeah.
question or is it, it was just a statement?
More of a statement,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.
You're done? Ms. Klotz, are you done for now?
Oh, yes, for now.
Okay, thank you.
I have more, but.
Ms. Bowman?
Yeah, one question, and I'll also give a little feedback as well. So the part where we're taking on borrowing, is that only borrowing for capital expenses, or is some of that borrowing paying for staff positions as well?
It's a good question. You can't borrow to pay for staff positions, so it should definitely, this is not projected to be for staff positions, and it couldn't be legally under a borrowing act. So, good question.
And is the borrowing only paying for I'll just call it the realignment plan, as a global thing, or is there stuff included in there like the technology plan or capital expenses at other schools?
So in the 95 million is just the realignment plan, I believe. Someone will tell me if I'm speaking incorrectly from that aspect. But then the other two borrowings that we talked about for the routine capital, that's where all the rest of it comes in. So that's where the technology, building maintenance, HVAC, anything that comes up is that $6.5 million that we talked about that would be borrowed here in advance, 3 years, and for the next 3 years. But that would pay for your routine capital outside of the realignment project.
Okay.
And Ben, let me just clarify, that does not include technology and items with the shorter lifespan. It's all major capital assets that would have, an extended lifespan of 20-plus years.
Okay, so it's things that you've shown us on the capital long-range plan.
Yes.
You don't really have to tick them off for me right now, but it's a new roof here, a boiler there, things like that.
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to word my comment. Was it 2 years ago when we voted on which way to go in the fork in the road to do realignment versus redistricting? And to do construction on the 2 middle schools versus on construction on several elementary schools. I think at that time, the estimated costs for this were so much lower that it seemed doable. And I am thanking you for, you basically threw a Hail Mary and I guess almost made the touchdown. But when I'm looking at the district raising taxes to the index for that many years in a row, for the average person, it would be $800 a year more by the end of the 8-year span. So that means for some people who are above average, they're going to be paying a lot more than that per year. And this isn't a project that I feel like we can sell to the community. I hear over and over again that people want changes at the high school. I hear it from students, I hear it from parents, I hear it from staff and teachers, and even from people who don't have kids in the district. When are you going to do something to the high school? It's a concern I've heard the entire time I've been on the board. And while I have heard individual concerns at different schools, for example, I know Lincoln wants to have a separate gym from their cafeteria, and I'm sure every school has their own requests that way. It's not with the same intensity of need as what I hear coming from the high school. And I can guarantee that if we move forward with this plan, we will not be able to address the high school, because after raising taxes every year for that many years, there will be such a community backlash that we will not be able to do another capital project for a long time. And so I don't want to be here saying that I'm not for this. I think I voted for everything the administration's asked the whole time I've been on the board. But this to me feels financially reckless. And I understand how we got here. I understand that we've had several years of wage inflation that have been really put the district in a very tricky financial place. When this project came up a few years ago, we were in a different financial climate than we are now. And I think we're at a place where we have to decide what to spend money on and what not to. And I'm going to underline the what not to. Usually when you're seeing tough financial times, you're talking about cutting, you're not talking about expanding. And we have a budget that's not balanced by $1.6 million, and we're still talking about expanding. And that to me just feels reckless to me. I feel like our timing's wrong. And I also have come to the point where the project itself has not been sold to me. I wouldn't know how to justify this to the community. And I feel like if I'm not sold and I'm as pro East Penn education, I think, as you can get, I don't think we're going to be able to sell it to the community. So I'm stating my reservations now. I might be voting against the budget tonight for the same reasons, because I feel incredibly uncomfortable about voting for a budget with a built-in $1.6 million deficit. I will admit while I'm talking that I regret my vote on the LRTA, although that said, that would have been just a drop in the bucket for what we're dealing with now. So those are my comments. You can respond now or respond later, but I just wanted to state where I am.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Dr. Whitney?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bowman, for eloquently stating the thoughts that I'm also having. And I don't know that I can be as eloquent or as articulate as you were just now, but everything that was just said by you is something that I 100% agree with. And I'm looking at this and I'm just as frankly shocked as now as I was when I first saw it. I'm not comfortable with it. The best analogy I can think of, and it's not a great analogy, is that we're taking out loans to repair the seats in our car when our engine is leaking oil and our radiator is leaking fluid, and there are structural problems. And of course, by that, the analogy there is the high school, of which there are so many issues that need to be addressed. Not could be, need to be addressed. And when we were voting on this, it was framed as a pairing with a high school conversation. That this was one piece that we were voting on that was separate from the high school, but that it was an affordable way to do a project, a large-scale project, which at the time was given to us, the reasons for which were related to enrollment increases, pressuring on the elementary schools. And I took the liberty, just to pause on that for a moment, of looking at some numbers. And I went back and looked at the Power School enrollment projections from October 2023 and what we were told. In October 2023, from October 2023, those numbers, the 2023 numbers that were given to us by Power School, to now, 2025, and of course they went out 10 years, they estimated a 2-year growth in K-5 enrollment of 139 students. The best numbers that I've seen, which are the numbers that we get from the administration, looking at August 1st, 2023 enrollment to now, the best numbers are that we've grown by about 40 students in that group. You would think Power School's numbers are most reliable in the first couple of years, but it seems as though they've overestimated the enrollment increases. And I could be wrong about this. I could have incorrect numbers, but those are the numbers that I have access to. Similarly, 6 through 8, and I won't go over these, but it was a similar situation when I looked at Power School's estimate. They actually estimated a small decline in 6 through 8 enrollment from 23 to 25, and we have had a decline, and it's been about five times what they projected the decline to be. So that enrollment pressure also does not seem to be materializing. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But that was one of the reasons why we were sold this project. Another reason why we were sold this project is equity. Equity among programming, equity among students. And I would agree with Ms. Bowman that I don't feel like I've been sold that solution yet. We haven't really heard much of anything about the House model and how that will practically work and what that will do to solve an equity question. We've seen a new related arts, the Innovate course in 5-6, which I find interesting, but doesn't in and of itself seem to be a justification for this. And I just don't think that we've made the case yet. I don't feel like I've received the case for this project, given the financial realities that are right in front of us. And I'm not sure how to get there. But this feels like a desperate way, and I respect our presenters here for their professional work in making the numbers work. But that's what it feels like. It feels like we're making the numbers work. I also went back and looked again at the schematic design. I spent quite a bit of time looking at the schematic design that we were shown last time and that we're being asked to vote on in 2 weeks to approve. I see again, it all works. It's all there. There are new classrooms. There are new spaces for things like autistic support, emotional support, all of which is vital and necessary if you're going to do a project like this. Everything seems to be there in good order, as we have a professional firm doing the schematic designs. But I don't see the big why. And if we're asking the average household owner in Emmaus, as the correct number there, $809 increase over the next 5 years, between now and 5 years from now, the average household owner, which actually is me, paying an additional $809, what are they getting for that? What kind of schools are they getting for that? What is the realignment doing when we still have a high school that has so many endemic issues? With overcrowding, with lack of classes that we've heard from all of our wonderful students from the AP Lang courses. A recurring theme seems to be access to courses, having enough courses available for all of our talented students. If that's a problem, I'm not sure why we're talking about this. And so those are my very honest and frank thoughts. I don't really have questions. I asked some questions, and some of them were addressed by you, and I appreciate that. You know, what if this, what if that? The 75% Act 1 index, that was one of my questions. What are the other scenarios that we can put in the mix here? And it doesn't look like any of them give us what we need, except for telling the community that we're maximizing your tax increases for the next 7 or 8 years. And that's a tough one. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Whitney. Mr. Kelly?
I think that what we have in front of us with the building plan, the house alignment, what has been put in front of us is amazing, and it's like a utopia for children. Like it is where I would like to see my kids, which will miss the vast majority of all this coming to fruition, where I would like to see them go. I think what you guys have done is awesome. Unfortunately, I think the risk right now is way too high on a national, global, and school district level to raise to the Act 1 index for 7 straight years, or however many for the foreseeable future. Stretching ourselves financially at this point, I think, is incredibly risky. I don't know, and Ben, maybe you can answer this. You say your projections are conservative, but if even on a conservative level, if we miss our revenue projections, the housing market slows, the businesses change. How can you account for that and project for that?
Just like, yeah, it's a good point. I mean, just like I said, it could go one way, it could go the other way too, right? So we think we have some conservativeness built in, but it could be that it gets worse. I mean, that's a possibility with projections, that they could always be worse than they are. So it's a fair point. And, these are just, again, it's especially when you get out 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you're really throwing darts at that point. I mean, you're really guessing. The first couple years are more locked in, but any projection is going to be wrong, one way or another, and it could be that way as well. So,
Mr. Sold, can you correct me if I'm wrong, but did we not bring in the revenue this past year that we thought we were going to? So just even our projection for this past year, in terms of housing, was lower than what we thought. Was that in our last meeting? I thought that's one thing that you'd said, where we had a deficit. And
Sorry, I think what you're referencing is the assessment growth number.
Right.
So, right, yeah, we had previously seen higher assessment growth, and we've seen that trend down a little bit with the sort of the slowing of warehouses and some of the big commercial industrial.
And so that
it's being grown slower in here. So that's one of the,
Yes.
one of the points, like that's being grown at a more conservative rate than maybe you have done in the past. And, who knows where it's going to go, but
okay.
that was lowered from what, stuff you've been experiencing in the past. I think it's 0.5% now, maybe. I can't remember exactly what we have in there, but yeah, that's a lower rate than you've achieved in the past.
Okay.
But,
And what is there, Ben? Is there any research or projections for what tax increase of those level at the Act 1 index for that many years in a row does to an economy of the district, the home sales, just the outlook of potential, more revenue building of people moving in?
It's a great question. I mean, so we did not dig into that, but I mean, I think to dig into that, you'd want to look at your neighbors and maybe, who you're not competing against, I'll call it. But if you buy a house in East Penn School District versus Parkland or some other school district, is it, what's the affordability compared to the other ones? I think right now you're in a pretty good spot. After the projects and everything, we didn't really dig in, but I mean, I think that would be a nice analysis to take a look at, maybe.
And did you guys?
We could do that.
I appreciate that. And did you guys do anything with potential businesses or housing projects and build that into the revenue growth?
No, I don't think there's a lot of new growth assumed in that aspect now.
I don't know if that would make a difference.
Probably not a big difference, but maybe. I mean, so that goes back to kind of to budgeting more conservative. Usually it's tough to budget for growth or project growth. I mean, you can, but if it doesn't come, then you're in a bad spot. So what I always like to do is not project as much growth as you think you might get. That way, if it comes, you're in a better spot than you would have been.
Okay.
But we're not projecting growth, a lot of growth in here, no. Just that 0.5% of assessed value growth, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ally, you were talking about the 0.22 mils annually. Is that, and we keep referencing the average amount increase per household over the span of these projections is around $850. Is that fair, Bill?
809, but yeah.
Okay, 800. Is that what, just in terms of dollars per month for that average person? How many of those dollars is in this building project? You know, what would it have been if we just have our average tax increase and we don't go to the Act 1? And what would that look for a person, a taxpayer? And what, you know, is it an extra $30 a month that we're looking at?
Good question. Yeah, we'll have to look at. We'll isolate that. Yeah, I don't think we've done that yet, but that's a good question, and we can do that.
Well, if I may interject, so we're presuming around, let's say, 3% Act 1 index per year. If that 170, 156, we already said that 0.22 is roughly 1%. So we're going to talk about, you know, $50, $60 a year is attributed to the project, so $5 a month.
So that attributes to the project, which includes the staffing and transportation. So if you want the debt service just isolated, we'd have to do that calculation. But that's correct for the complete realignment project.
Yeah.
So Dr. Levinson, I don't know if I was actually hearing everything you just said, so I apologize, but you're saying that the building project itself for an average household is about $5 a month.
Well, it's the all-inclusive attributed to, even with transportation plus the building fund and the borrowing and all that, yeah, about $5 a month per the average household number that's presented here.
Okay. I appreciate that. My last question was projections for federal fundings and state fundings, right? You know, that's something that is touchy right now, is what we're actually going to see. You know, the statewide is hard, but federally we could see cuts coming, right? So what, and that could, and though it's not much, we still could be talking about close to $2 million. That
Federal revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did take a look at that based on that question. So historically, from 23 to 25, I was looking at, state revenue grew by about 5%. Federal revenue actually declined by 10%. There might be a reason for that. But in the projections going forward, we have federal revenue growing at 1.66%, so pretty low percentage. State revenue at 3.6%, so lower than the historical, but a little bit higher. And then local revenue is 3.7%, because that's what you would raise your the taxes to at the Act 1. But I think the federal revenue, it's growing at a lower growth rate because nobody knows what's going to happen. The good thing for you is it's a very small amount of your budget. Every dollar matters, but it's $1.6 million of your current budget, which is 200 million total. So
not a big deal, but something. Right?
It's something, yeah. I won't say it's, every dollar counts, and it does, and it builds up, but it's a small portion of the budget. So if it would get cut in half, it's not going to end the world for the district. I don't think you would have a way to make it up. State revenue would be a different story.
Well, I have to say I love this project. Like, I think it's the best case scenario for where we can be with our educating our kids and supporting our kids. At the same time, I think where I'm at, kind of like Bill's saying, like what projects do you take on? Where are we spending? If I could see in just an easier format on what that dollar amount is, if we just raise our taxes at our typical levels or projected levels without the building project, to kind of weigh what the financial commitment is per household, I think that would be helpful that might be, at this point, the only way for me to support the plan moving forward, I think.
Sure, yeah, we can definitely follow up with that.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Before I do another round, I just want to get everybody, Mr. Flaggy.
Yeah, I'll make it quick and to the point here. I share a lot of the concerns as my colleagues here. I'm not sure with the current financial situation within the country, the state, locally, if we could afford to do this project. I think our focus does need to be here at the high school. I cannot go out there and ask the taxpayers to keep paying more and more and more and more for the next 7 years. I'll end up getting burned at the stake for that one if I'm still sitting here at that time. But I just wanted to throw out there that I just can't see this happening. I really can't. Not currently. If we need to focus anywhere, it should be the high school. So I believe so. Thank you. Just a comment.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
I've been listening to the conversation tonight, and I don't disagree with a single thing that was said. And I'm sensitive to all of the concerns that have been brought up. They are all accurate, and they are all real, and they will have tangible impact on whatever ends up happening over the next X number of weeks, months, years. It's all going to have tangible impacts on folks' bottom line. I wasn't really planning on coming tonight to rehash 3 years worth of conversations. But I know that in those 3 years, a lot has changed. I've heard some of that tonight. We were originally talking about, the elementary and middle school solutions, and we were doing that in conjunction with the high school solution, and that's not something on the table at this time. That, like projections, financial, demographic, all those things, they change over the 3 years. There may be updated numbers. I had to dig through my Google Drive while I was listening to everybody to try to find some of the presentations that we've reviewed over those past 3 years. But if I go back to one of the original ones, when we were looking at how we were going to first solve the elementary capacity issue, which was at that time it still is a capacity issue at the elementary level. We were talking about putting additions onto several buildings, and while yes, that did have some flexibility in being able to decide how we wanted to go about addressing a renovation or an addition at multiple buildings. You can stretch it out. You have more flexibility and how you structure that. The price tag overall was more expensive to do those buildings than it was to do the 2 renovations at Ayer and LMS. So as we're sitting here looking and rightfully so at the astronomical price tag of this these 2 particular renovation projects. It is large. It is a lot. It is still cheaper than one of the other options that we were looking at, and I don't want to lose sight of that. I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that we have a lot of districts that are in the same boat as us that are also facing these really difficult conversations about what the heck to do about their capacity. What the heck to do about their aging buildings. And some of those districts nearby have price tags that make ours look much more reasonable in comparison. And I say that with a hard swallow because of how large those numbers are. We just saw it tonight. I am sympathetic to the capacity issues that we're seeing at the high school. That is a capacity issue that directly impacts families throughout the district because that is the one building where all of our families go to. So we're not having conversations necessarily about, and one of the district in Lower Macungie about capacity issues being faced by families and students that are at Jefferson, for example, because we're not being affected at those 2 ends of the district. Whereas at the high school level, we have kids that are for the most part, more articulate about what they see every day in the hallways and how how bad the congestion is and how much capacity they don't have and they wish they had more room to do. And I think that there is that tugs on us, all of us. We want to do all of the things. We can't do all of the things, but we want to do all of the things. But the one thing that I'm most sympathetic to is comments that's been brought up a couple of times tonight. It's not the elementary and middle versus the high school project. It's not the logistics or the selling, quote unquote, of the 5, 6, 7, 8 realignment. It is the idea that if we do this, which we've spent years planning for, if we do this, we don't have room from our eyes to do the high school project as well. And that gives me a lot of anxiety as I look at this. And to say, okay, well, we can't do that, but let's put the 5, 6, 7, 8 project aside and say, okay, well, let's say the priority now then is the high school. Well, if it is, we have spent 3 years planning for a process, planning for a change that we are potentially talking about switching over to a high school project that has been fleshed out, that hasn't the finances are going to be even worse than this, and so not that I want to just put all the eggs in one basket and do the one project and then figure out the rest of it later when that comes, because I don't know when that later is going to be. I don't love that idea either. I don't think that we are setting ourselves up for success by trying to redo a lot of the work that has already been done. And I say that knowing that going forward with what we have in front of us is not palatable or ideal for anybody in this room or anybody listening online, or anybody that's going to be having conversations in the days to come. So I don't have an easy answer. I don't think anybody does. But I think that we need to put some trust in the process that has gotten us to this point, even if things have changed dramatically along the way. That's all I have for now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Smith. Before I go around for another round, I'd like to say some things, please. I guess I don't share the skepticism that some of my colleagues have expressed for this project. Throughout this process and the description of what we were attempting to do with this K-8 realignment, and I like Mr. Kelly's enthusiasm in terms of what he sees for the student benefit. I see what we're trying to do with the K-8 programmatic plans to help position our district for the next 10 to 20 years. And I think there's been some fantastic ideas that have been expressed, and also incorporating what I know to be, actual teacher concerns at the through the K-8 grades that are going to be addressed through these plans. I know when I was, for myself, I guess to use the term, I feel sold a lot for the vision myself. Again, I'm not going to discount, the cost concerns that have been expressed. But again, as a district, and maybe dovetailing a little bit on what Mr. Smith is trying to say, is that, we can't do everything. What can we do that's going to enhance the district moving forward? And what's been proposed for K-8 is exciting, and I think it's going to have tremendous impact on students when they move through that program, and again, positioning ourselves and our students for the next 10 to 20 years. Some other notes. There are real needs to apportion space, particularly at the elementary level, and as Mr. Smith noted, that it was a key motivation for trying to focus the realignment aspect and make our elementary buildings K through 4, and then shift the space and try and find a more economical way to accommodate that change by focusing on the middle schools. So, in some ways, I'm not sure that we can afford not to take action and capitalize on the efforts that have been made over the last few years in terms of the direction that we've chosen at this point. I'm not discounting the fact that there is a need at the high school, but the high school, even in the renovation aspect, is probably 2 to 3 times more expensive than what we'd have to do for K through 8. So again, not ignoring that, but I think that there are opportunities to do what we need to do and address many of the things that have been brought up in terms of what needs attention at the high school. I do want to emphasize again, projections are just that, projections. Some things will go one way or the other. I do think that year to year, we do this anyway, but it's going to require a much greater focus in any given year in order to look for opportunities that are going to create space to incorporate what we're projecting as the spending that's required in order to implement this project. There are many levers that are available in order to help fit this in. I know that we talked at the last meeting in May. Maybe our state government will finally agree on some type of cyber charter reform plan and save us $1 million a year. That would go a long way to helping our finances over the next 7, 8 years. Every year seems a little bit closer. I'm hoping this might be the year, but we're just going to have to see. A couple other points. If we remember the timeline, we are still several months from understanding the actual cost numbers for the project. When we do tackle the approval of the schematic design, again, could be in 2 weeks, depending on how we decide to pace that in our meetings. That's basically just giving a green light for further study. And it's going to take a bit to move into the details and prior, and at that point, we're going to have to put together bid packages and solicit bids for that, and we'll get a much better handle in terms of the cost of the project. So again, is it possible that our $95 million price tag could be $95 million? Is it possible it could be less? I'm not sure. And again, with the economic uncertainty, it's going to be hard to understand that, but we're still several months away from that. So I would still be willing to move the process forward in order to get an answer on that. Because again, if we end up, putting this out to bid and it's more expensive, that's going to be definitive for us in terms of what we're going to do. So, I would encourage my fellow board members to consider that. Again, the investment of time and what I think are the primary advantages of this plan, deserve further work in order to understand whether or not this is something that we can or cannot do. And then just looking ahead for, what we have to, what we're going to do on the next item, if we ever get to that, which is the discussion of the 25-26 budget. I just want to emphasize that what we're talking about here today, right now, when the K-8 realignment is not really in what we're going to be approved for the budget. Okay, what we've approved, or what we're looking to approve for the budget is for the 25-26 year. It's not investing in the K-8 realignment just yet. So, those who are thinking of potentially voting against the budget need to understand that the realignment project is not part of that. So I want just to make sure everybody's thinking about what we need to do for 25-26 and separate that, and for future conversations, what we're going to do with the budget or for the project. Again, I think this is a robust discussion. I think there are definitely legitimate concerns. In any given year, we work very hard to try to, make it affordable. And I certainly would not want to see, an end stream of Act One index every year. Historically, we've often found ways to come below. Hopefully we're at a point where we're starting to level off on some of those pressures on the budget. But again, it's going to be a year-to-year thing in terms of tackling that. So again, all right, well, thank you. If there are additional comment from the board, I'll take that now. Gab, or Ms. Klotz, sorry.
So, thank you. Some comments just coming from the conversation. So, Dr. Levinson, you mentioned that you heard from the teachers from K through 8 about specific concerns and what they feel the benefits and the drawbacks of the current situation that we have, right? And also regarding realignment. So I would really like to hear that and to be able to listen to a variety of teachers, hear what they have to say, where they are now versus where they think they'll be, their opinion about that, as well as the teachers from the high school. I would very much value that feedback. Additionally, so, Mr. Smith, you were saying that we have used multiple years to review this, and we would be wasting all that time and restarting things, if we stop. And I completely understand that. But also, when you see something that you have been working on and then you realize that, this might not work, you should just stop it, or just rethink. Maybe just take a breather and reconsider different options, that kind of thing, and not continue on something because you have spent, a few years going by. So just a thought with what you were saying there. So another thing, so we redo the 5, 6, 7, 8 center. So not redo, we go through with the realignment. Okay, then the students have these wonderful buildings and, everything is new, fresh, exciting with the Ron Clark house system, right? Then they go to Emmaus High School where it's completely different. And I feel like as a student, that would be jarring to me. And kind of wonder, why are we focusing on 5, 6, 7, 8 when ultimately everybody goes to the high school and there are concerns there? There's something else with that. And just briefly about the house system. So I did a bit of a dive into this, and I have questions why we're choosing the Ron Clark house system versus house systems that are commonly used in Europe, for instance. So that's the standard there from what I've been reading. Also, the house system, it seems very similar to what we're already doing in the middle schools. And we have teams, we have positive reinforcement, we have team names and team colors, I believe, if I recall correctly from my daughter's time there. So, I feel looking at that and not being an educator, maybe that's something that we could tweak instead of using a whole new program for it. I don't know, again, I'm not an educator, but I would like to hear ideas about that, for instance. I think that we need to pause this and reconsider our options. I just don't see how it's feasible. Thank you.
Ms. Ford.
Okay. So just some thoughts. While sitting and listening to the conversations, my first thought is often skepticism can be the enemy of progress. And I also know that it takes courage for any project of any size. And one thing I think we have to consider is doing nothing is not an option. I know when we were talking about the high school, the price tag for that was pricier. So to switch gears, we'd still have the same barriers. They would be the same barriers. So I don't really see how we just change tracks. So that's my first thought. I do agree with Mr. Smith and the time put in. It's work. And I also know that I personally don't have the knowledge that our presenters have. And so we do have to have some modicum of trust in what they're saying, their experience, and their time in doing the work. You know, I also am thinking that, in order to ensure that we have families that aren't leaving the district to move to Parkland and other places that have better offerings, we have to be able to offer the families something. We do know that there have been concerns. We also talk about, the burden of the charter schools. Well, we cannot have a situation where we're actually encouraging people to seek out the charter school option because we don't have the options to offer our community. And so I just think collectively we have to consider those things. What is it that we want for our students? What is palatable? What is the community going to support? But I can say that it's not doing nothing. We cannot be a body that passes on these burdens to other generations. The buildings aren't going to stop depreciating. They're not. So if we do nothing, that means we actually increase the problem. The buildings aren't going to magically sprout new rooms, and our students aren't going to stop having needs. And we don't want to set up a situation where our teachers don't want to be in the school system because they're going to greener pastures that have better buildings and programming. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Ms. Ford. Additional comments? Ms. Bowman?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily mean to set this whole discussion up as a middle level versus high school level, except for that this first came up, they were both proposed as we were going to do these projects in tandem. And I understand why we're not, but at the same time, I think the high school is an easier sell to the community. I get that it's more expensive, but it's something that everybody wants. It's a problem that people have identified. It's when people ask, why did you spend that much money on that? There are people in the community that will defend it. Whereas when they ask, why are you raising taxes every year for 7 years? And they want, well, it won't be me because I'm going off the board. It would actually be really easy for me to vote yes on this and leave. But but at the same time, I don't have an answer for that question. I want to have the enthusiasm that some of my other board members have for this. I do think that the board members who were on the committee at the very beginning have an advantage over the rest of us who were not shared the vision. I'm not actually sold that there's a problem at the elementary level. So there's all these steps along the way where we've had the presentations, but I just haven't been sold by those presentations. I want to be, and especially for something that is going to require this much investment. If I was sold, I would be all for taking the risk and doing it. The problem is that I'm not, and I don't know how to say, oh, we have 2 different ball fields, 2 different football fields, 2 different gyms, like, how do I tell the community that that's something that we actually needed? I don't even feel that we need it myself. And it seems like as we split off and did this realignment, different problems came up, and then we had to reach for different solutions to those problems. So it was like, oh, well, when we put all the kids together, not as many kids are going to be able to play sports. So, okay, here's a solution. We'll have 2 different sporting teams. And it's to me as a board member, I'm saying, wait, we need to put the brakes on this because it just doesn't seem feasible anymore. And I would rather stop now. And yes, there will be sunk costs for sure, but I don't know how we continue to move forward with a plan that I don't see how, especially people who don't have kids in the schools, are going to think that we spent their tax dollars well with this plan. My biggest reservation, though, is that we're in a position where our finances aren't good. We've had several years of wage inflation, and we're in a position where we actually can't fund the contracts that we've already agreed to. If we didn't have building projects on the table, I'm going to guess the administration, you would have been coming to us talking about staff cuts. And so it just doesn't seem like now is the time to do this. I'm all for improving our buildings, doing capital projects. My two main problems is that I'm not sold on this particular project, and I am really worried about the financial pressures that we're already in and the economic climate that we are likely moving into. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, Mr. Kelly.
I really like what Ms. Ford said, and I appreciate you saying that. I think the buck has been passed for years in our school district, and we have to face it. And I also have a lot of trust that the people that have the most knowledge of the projections and the buildings, when they say that it's the K-8 that needs to be focused on, I believe that. So I believe that we're in a position, and coming in on the board and talking to parents and community members, wholeheartedly, what I've said is that we have to face this. We have to do this. I think the fear for me with the high school is an added burden. How much does it, not that it's not going to get taken on, but just where is it going to fit in, and what is that going to do to the financial outlook, and the taxes? Like, how does that fit? So it's more of like, what's going to be added with it, the uncertainty there. But I think we're in a position where we can't just keep pushing this off. Maybe we push it off another year, and at the same time we're collecting revenue for it, even if it's not in the budget. As Ted Dabrowski came in and said we should have raised to the limit the Act 1 index last year, and when we had the 6% to bring that in. Maybe that's something that we need to consider and continue and plan for in the future, and push this down the line just a little bit, as if you would if you're making another big purchase. It's not the right time, but I just wanted to say I agree with Ms. Ford, and I think we need to be focused on fixing this for the district and for our kids.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, first, I'm just going to say thank you for standing for as long as I would think. We don't have any more questions. We're just going to talk amongst ourselves. So if you want to take a break, have a seat, feel free.
Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
sure.
you.
I see you guys standing out the corner of my eye. I'm like, man, somebody needs to let them go and have a seat. No, I 3 years ago, and again, I don't want to be here debating one project versus another, the merits of one project versus another project, or the merits of not doing anything at all. But it seems like that's where the conversation has taken us tonight. 3 years ago, we were given a bill of health, and it wasn't good. And over those 3 years, and speaking with many experts on a variety of things, we were given this as a particular as the best solution, and we as a board decided that this was the best solution in order to address what was not a great bill of health for our kids going forward. And and now that we have the medicine here right in front of us, it feels like we don't want to take the medicine that has been prescribed for us. And to say it's going to be, an easy pill to swallow, that is not true. It's like that cough syrup that they say is cherry and is not cherry in any way, shape, or form. It's disgusting and nobody wants to take it, but it makes things a little bit better, at least for a period of time. And to get confronted with this and say, I think this might help. I decided this is going to help. I'm not so sure I really want to go and do that because I don't like something about it. In this case, the price tag. To not do anything is not an option, like Ms. Ford said. It is not an option to sit and not do anything and say, I don't like that plan because I don't like the price tag. The high school price tag is not going to be any better. It is not. And to say that that we're now not going to like the price tag and go back and debate the merits of a K-8 realignment plan to 5, 6, 7, 8 versus adding on to elementary schools versus not doing anything at all. That conversation, we've already had it as a board. We've already balanced the merits of all of them. And with all due respect to my colleagues, I don't feel like I have any more of an advantage now because I happen to be the middle level representative of the board when we were taking a look 3 years ago, because we've had so many conversations that have gone so many different directions and added so many other layers of information on top since that first initial conversation that I feel like I don't know any more than my colleagues do, or I shouldn't, because we've had so many opportunities to pour over all of the specifics. Like Mr. Kelly, I would love to have sent my kids to a 5-6 building and not a 7-8 building. Like I've said in the past, I would love to be a part of the community of a 5-6 and a 7-8 building. I'm not here to debate the merits of those things because while I truly think that they are what is best for kids, house structures, equitable access to all the supports across both buildings. I see that vision, but we're not here to. I don't think we're here to go and change what we as a board decided was the vision going forward because we don't like a price tag. I don't know how to fund all of those pieces any more than anybody else does right now. I don't love the idea of having to go up to the Act 1 index. Matter of fact, not that I don't love it, I hate that idea. But to say that we're not going to do that, it doesn't change the problem. We still have that really bad bill of health that is, if we don't do anything, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board. It'll be another 3 years before we get back to finding a plan that works. And now we're 6 years in. I think we have to step back, take a look at what we are, the original goals of this process when they were set out 3 years ago and say, okay, here we are right now. We need to make a decision. We need to make a decision. And the decision can't be not to do anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Did you have?
Dr. Whitney was first, and
All
then
right.
I'll go.
Okay. Thanks. So first, a couple things, but also just a quick coda to what I said earlier. And look, I'm going to echo again my eloquent colleague, Ms. Bowman, and say that I don't want to be here saying that this isn't going to work, right? And I don't want to be here, this is the last thing I want to be saying is that I don't get it, that I don't see it, I don't understand why we're doing this, right? I don't want to be saying those things. I want to get to yes. I want, and I think everybody's comments here reflect the fact that every single member of this board is entirely in support of a great East Penn school district. That is not in question, no matter where people fall down on this. But I'm not a yes, and I'm not seeing the vision, and I'm hearing my colleagues saying we have to do this, and I don't know what this is anymore. What is this? Because when the specter that's being raised here of doing nothing is not something that I'm in support of. I'm not in support of not repairing roofs when they leak, although I can tell you one place that we aren't doing anything about that, which is in the gymnasium in our high school, which leaks every time that it rains. So that's one thing we're not addressing there. But if we're talking about basic capital improvements, yes, buildings appreciate, yes, yes, yes. No one, or at least I'm not, advocating for us to not spend a single dime on capital upgrades and maintenance and the basic things that we already do because we are so financially well managed as a district. We budget capital reserves. We have the funds to do those things. No one's suggesting that doing nothing, if that means just letting buildings fall apart around our students, that's not the option. That's not the alternative to what we're talking about here. At least it's not one that I'm doing. So I want to get to yes. I just want to, I'm ruminating on what Dr. Levinson said, that, well, the vote that we take on a schematic design is just a vote to keep moving forward. I'm a little confused by that because board votes are board votes. Otherwise, why are they board votes? And I don't understand if we are voting on a schematic design, I understand that doesn't mean it's absolutely final and written in ink, but we're approving, if we vote to approve it, we are approving that design. That's not nothing, and it doesn't just mean pushing it down the road a little bit further, at least not to my understanding of what this process is about. I've seen the timeline of this process. There are diamonds on it where the board is voting on certain things. Those allow the whole project to move forward, not just the conversation about the project. So I don't quite buy into that logic, I guess. But the bottom line here for me is that I really do, I want to be in support of this. And I was, when I voted on this initially, I had a lot of people coming up to me and saying, why? What is this about? I defended it, absolutely. And I could still be there, and I can still be there, and I actually have still been there when people have come up and kind of questioned this. But I think given where we are, the finances, everything we're not quite sure of that's going to be happening in these buildings, it's just really, really hard at this point. But the bottom line is I want to be a yes, and I hope I can get there.
Okay, Mr. Jankowski.
So I think to start, all the comments made by every one of my colleagues, I think, are fantastic and valid. So nothing I am saying here is intended to belittle anyone. And I agree with all the comments. So a project of this scale, in my opinion, needs at least a vast majority of the board to approve it. A 5-4 vote on a project of this scale with this impact, I think, is terrible and a recipe for disaster. I agree, something needs to be done. In order to keep this school district moving in the direction we want to move, to make it a place that and provide for our teachers, our staff, our students, money's going to be spent. The comments we didn't foresee this situation 2 years ago, 3 years ago. We don't know what it's going to be like 2 years, 3 years. But I do think it is incumbent upon the administration to present a base case for this board that we can overwhelmingly agree on. And if that means, Dr. Whitney had made comments about the difference in the numbers and from what we saw with Power, from Power School, what am I thinking about? Do we take a fresh look at what redistricting could mean for the elementary schools and the middle schools, and how that would impact the numbers, and maybe address some concerns and shift the focus to the high school, maybe not going all in, but at least addressing some structural capital changes to address the concerns there. I think, unfortunately, we need to take a fresh look at this, because my concern is that there are too many issues and concerns raised on both sides of the table that are very valid, and I don't know that we're in a position to vote on a schematic design or anything without, and a number of the board members weren't here when we voted the first time or weren't, and I don't think that's fair to be in a position of living with a legacy vote. Obviously, that's what you do in government, but again, looking at the numbers, we have to spend money. And I think the decision's got to be made whether that money's spent at the middle level or at the high school level, and what are the other options. And it does feel, I agree with Mr. Smith, we're going back, but unfortunately, I think that's where we are. And I think we do need to have a fresh look at this and a fresh case made to see what we can agree on is the right move for the school district. And that's all I got.
Okay. And I'd like to give the administration a chance to respond.
I appreciate the opportunity just to offer comments, and I want to start off by saying I can't be more sincere in terms of my comments are really not intended to be a rebuttal to any one board member's comments, but I very strongly believe that words matter, and so I do think it's important for, in my role as a representative of our administrative team, to just clarify a few points along the way. And I do appreciate Mr. Smith actually giving us a little bit of a history lesson. And so I'll give a really abbreviated version that our work with the realignment actually began back in March of 2022. At the time, we worked with KCBA. They did a feasibility study for the organization. Again, public presentations, information available publicly for anyone who's interested in that brief history. We then did some extensive work, and in October 2023, we came back and gave a public presentation after having worked as a team and in subcommittees for several months. And we were addressing the key issues that we knew all along, going back to the March 2022 feasibility study. Specifically, we knew we had capacity issues at the elementary level. We very clearly articulated the specific buildings. It's almost all of them in which we are at capacity. We also knew when we looked at the demographic study, you're right that Power School does our enrollment for us. We actually get updates annually. I just want to be clear that we have capacity issues in several elementary buildings at the middle level, and there are some space needs at the high school as well. But our demographic study shows us that enrollments is remaining relatively stable over the next 10, 20 years. There is growth that's happening in certain areas of the district. This Power School actually works with all of our local municipalities and has identified exactly where those developments are. And again, we know that the growth in some areas of the East Penn School District is actually exacerbating those capacity issues in some levels. And so it was capacity that we really took a look at. We never presented information that said enrollment in the East Penn School District was booming. We know that we're, pretty much landlocked, but we know we have these pockets of development, and so it was about addressing capacity needs at the elementary level and in one of our middle schools. We then also spent a significant amount of time addressing the inequities in the programs that we were offering students, particularly at the middle level. And then the other piece that was identified by, again, as early as March of 2022, is that there were structural needs at Emmaus High School. We certainly were very transparent in the fact that Emmaus High School, we are a school of 2,700 to 2,800 students. We're a large high school. We're really proud of that because with a large high school, we're able to offer a breadth of courses. And so I too love when our students come and advocate. We actually have many structures built in at Emmaus High School, at the elementary and middle level, in which student voice is a regular part of our district's program, and we solicit that feedback. When we talk about adding classes at Emmaus High School, that is staffing, which is recurring costs. And so I don't want to necessarily confuse conversations here when we talk about there were structural needs at Emmaus High School. And so looking at all of those different factors, again, committees identified 3 different options that were presented publicly at the October 2023 meeting. Some of our current board members were members then. At the time, we looked at, to address all three of those issues. We looked at an option that included redistricting, K-8, and also included renovations and additions needed at least one, very likely two elementary buildings. We then looked at the realignment, and I will say this whole idea of grade restructuring was actually on the table back in March of 2022 and was suggested by KCBA as maybe a creative way to address multiple needs in the organization. So we looked at the restructuring as a second option. You're absolutely right that what was presented as option 3 was and 3 different options within option 3 to address structural needs at Emmaus High School. And I also want to point out, because I certainly appreciate that when we presented the October 2023 plan, again, at that point, we were very fortunate to have Breslin on board with us already. We thought that was really important in the planning process. And I want to emphasize that the numbers that were provided at that time, we're comfortable referring to them as cost estimates. I think you can appreciate that early in a project. To say that it was a financial projection or it really was a very general sense of what those projects could cost us. And so Mr. Smith is right. Actually, the team identified at that time that the K-8 realignment was the most financially feasible way to address the capacity issues at both levels, as well as the programmatic needs. I want to say, as a reminder, the high school, to take a look at the high school, and again, this is in 2023, the high school options that were presented, that included a renovation of the existing high school, ranged anywhere from about $180 million up to a new build, which was about $260 million. And I am not a financial expert, nor am I a construction management firm, but in informal conversations, we know that those costs have creeped up even from there. Like, you can appreciate that because the original approximate cost that we heard for the realignment was about $66 million. And so again, I'm not saying the differential will be exactly relative, but those were the options that were presented at the time. And so given the fact that, again, at some elementary levels, we have a very immediate need to address capacity because we know there is development in a certain area of the district, and we're going to face some very real capacity issues at some of our buildings in the very near future. The board at that time was aligned and there was consensus that the appropriate way for the district to move forward was to address that most immediate need at the K-8 level. I absolutely appreciate that perhaps one of the most frequently asked questions since then to me as well is, what about the high school, right? Because all of our kids matter and all of our kids deserve buildings and programs that are equitable and appropriately meet their needs. And so, I mean, oftentimes the answer that I have personally given is, the first step for this board was really to have a firm sense in terms of the cost of the K-8 realignment model. Because I believe, and I believe our financial advisors support that philosophy, that we first have to know what the costs are. We need an accurate estimate of costs for the K-8 realignment project and a feasible plan for how we're going to support that, project. It would be illogical of me or anyone to say, oh, we can do the high school in 2 years or we can do it in 3. It really was, we need to, as a team, come together and have a sound plan for how we're going to move ahead with the realignment before we can consider taking on additional debt. And that was really the best answer. And I sit here today and say that's still the best answer that I can give. If our financial advisors at a future meeting have additional information or insight that they can give, certainly we are open to that. The other piece that I wanted to just mention is that I cannot emphasize enough that the financial plan that was presented tonight is not a desperate attempt to finance the K-8 realignment. Neither I nor any member of my administrative team, and certainly a team of highly respected and with incredible experience in financial management and financial planning, none of us would bring forth a plan that we perceive to be, oh, fingers crossed, this should work. This is a plan that this is a plan that supports and is able to make the K-8 realignment happen. Again, I wouldn't expect that our financial advisors would come forth with something that they see as skeptical, don't think it's going to work. Hence, the depth that they have gone into in terms of the immediate and long-term impact on our budget in this organization. And then the final piece that I want to mention is, you're absolutely right. There are still some unanswered questions in terms of the house model. I want to say the house model is a philosophical approach to building community in schools and in a district. Not to be confused with teams at the middle school, but I also want to say that the house model was actually identified as a strategy for us to address what was originally brought up as an obstacle, because what was brought forth is that in that creating a 5-6 and a 7-8 building, there was comment among the board and in the community that, oh, we now have 2 bigger middle schools because we're bringing all of our kids together sooner. Now, the great beauty and benefit to that is we're bringing all of our students in the East Penn School District together in 5th grade to build that positive school community. One could say that's a great gift, and it actually is. But we recognize there's dilemmas with having big buildings of about 1,200 students. And so the house model was really proposed as a philosophical approach, a framework for how you take a large space, a large community of learners, and break it down and create these smaller communities that support each other, not only in the school. There's actually a lot with regard to a house model that happens outside of the school. And you're absolutely right. We haven't unpacked that yet, but we sent a team to learn about one framework, and we need to bring it back and make it East Penn, because very few things work just transplanting it from one place to another. So that is the intention with the house model. And in terms of athletics, again, what was identified is that by creating a single 7-8 building, we currently have 2 PIAA athletic teams, one at Iyer, one at Lower Macungie Middle School. And again, a challenge or obstacle that was identified is that if students are now seeking an athletic opportunity, are we perhaps limiting some students who would have previously made a team at their home school? And so we know other schools that do it. Our goal was to continue to have 2 PIAA teams in that same building. And so the addition of fields and the additional gym at Lower Macungie Middle School was really designed to continue to fulfill what we heard from the board and the community as we want our students to have at least as many, if not more, opportunities that they currently have. I think those are all of the points that I wanted to make. And again, sincerely, they're not intended to be a rebuttal to anything that was said, but I just think it's important for board members who perhaps weren't with us for the entire journey, as well as the community to have an understanding as to where some of these items came up that were brought up tonight. And I'll just conclude by saying, as always, like the discussion among our board tonight, I think was very symbolic of the high-functioning team that you are, and we can agree respectfully and have ongoing dialogue and discussion. And I think for us as an administrative team, that discussion was really helpful as we now, think about the feedback that we have tonight and determine next steps.
Thank you, Dr. Campbell. If it's okay, are there any other comments the board would like to share?
Just
one, Ms. Ford.
I just wanted to confirm there were focus groups that included teachers, community members, and the like, correct?
We've had ongoing committees, stakeholder groups, surveys, faculty listening sessions. We actually just finished our faculty listening sessions, I think 2 weeks ago. And so certainly we have we feel as if we have been very intentional in building in collaborative structures to make decisions and bring forth recommendations to the board.
Thank you for the question. All right, with further discussion, to just say what Dr. Campbell said, there has been a valuable discussion, a lot to think about for the administration to take back and discuss, and we'll move forward from here. Okay, again, thank you to my colleagues for that. Okay, part two. Moving on to the budget approval process for the 25-26 year. I think it's best if we take items A through D together. That's the final budget adoption resolution, the fund balance commitment resolution, the homestead and farmstead resolution, and the property tax rebate program. I'd like to get a motion on that, and then I'm going to turn things over to the administration to provide an overview of what's changed since our last review in May. So may I have a motion on items A through D for the budget?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll turn things over to the administration to discuss.
Thank you. On December 9th, 2024, the board took the first official action relating to the 25-26 budget by adopting a resolution not to exceed the Act 1 index. Since that time, over the past 6 months, there have been 6 budget presentations and updates outlining all aspects of the budget. On April 28th, the board approved the proposed final budget, which has been made available for public inspection. This evening, I would like to briefly highlight the key changes that have been made to the proposed final budget to arrive at the final budget that's being presented this evening. All of the changes are listed in detail on pages 36 through 40 of the PDE 2028 General Fund Budget document. There are 3 key revenue adjustments that account for a majority of the changes with regard to revenue. Current real estate taxes, despite maintaining a 4% tax rate increase and a modest rise in assessed property values, you'll notice that revenue totals decreased by $227,000. This reduction is directly tied to an increase in the property tax reduction from the state gaming fund. These additional property tax reduction funds must be passed through to qualifying homestead and farmstead properties, effectively reducing the amount of real estate tax that we will receive. So real estate tax goes down, but we did receive more in gaming funds, so it's an offset. Earnings on investments increased by $366,000, reflecting stronger than anticipated returns during the current fiscal year. While this category was adjusted upward, the estimate still remains conservatively projected for 25-26. As I had just mentioned, the property tax reduction allocation increased by $405,000, again, effectively offsetting the current real estate tax adjustments. And then finally, there were a few other small adjustments in areas such as tuition from patrons, miscellaneous income, and various state reimbursements and grants. These are routine refinements that we typically make during this final stage of budget development before we put the final budget out for review. On the expenditure side, I'll highlight again the key areas. Wages and benefits, salaries for administration, teachers, and support staff were updated to reflect current staffing levels and revised projections. As noticed during the previous meeting's budget update, one position was removed from district priorities because it could be accounted for in the existing staffing roster. Benefit adjustments included significant decreases in medical and dental insurance, and those decreases are based on the current employee enrollment census. We also saw reductions in life, long-term disability, FICA, and retirement contributions. We talked about insurances a bit earlier in the budget process. We received our final renewals, which are on the agenda for the board's consideration of approval this evening. And you'll note there were increases in the areas of workers' compensation, property liability, auto, cyber insurance, and again, all based on actual renewal rates that we've received. Charter school tuition and pupil transportation, both categories were adjusted upward to reflect updated enrollment and estimated costs for next year. Also, we added here at the end of the budget process, the final remaining ESSER offset funds that were being carried in our fund balance of $55,200. They're being added to the budget to be used for the employment of psychologist interns during the 25-26 fiscal year. You'll note the return or the addition of the one-time allocation of $100,000 for band uniforms, which had previously been removed for purposes of balancing the budget. Several cleanup items, again, minor financial adjustments for grant expenditures, capital reserve contributions, and other miscellaneous expenditures. Again, typical cleanup type things just before we present the final budget. Finally, we adjusted the budgetary reserve line item to maintain it at a 5% reserve, and that's 5% of expenditures. So that really summarizes the changes to the between the proposed final budget and the final budget. I'll just comment on the other items that are up for the board's consideration with this motion. The fund balance commitment resolution has become common practice for our district. It formalizes the board's intent to commit a portion of the ending fund balance, which would be as of June 30th, 2025 for specific uses. Specifically, the $55,200 in remaining ESSER funds. Again, this was June 30th, 2025, so that's the end of the current fiscal year to carry into the next budget year. So it's the $55,000 in remaining ESSER funds, as well as $1.6 million to support future technology infrastructure purchases. And these commitments ensure that the designated resources, the fund balance resources, are clearly identified and their intent is identified in accordance with governmental accounting standards, as well as school district policy. Also on for the board's consideration is the 2025 Homestead and Farmstead Resolution. Again, this resolution outlines the calculation and parameters for the homestead and farmstead tax exclusion funded by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania through the Property Tax Relief Fund, sometimes referred to as the Gaming Fund, and it authorizes the homestead farmstead exclusion for 25-26. As I had previously noted, the allocation has increased by $460,000. Therefore, when we do the calculation, the property tax property tax reduction, will increase from $184.25 for the current year to $211. There's about a $25 increase per homestead and farmstead for 25-26. And the final item for the board's consideration is the property tax rebate program. This resolution will authorize the continuation of the PTR program for 25-26, implementing expanded income eligibility guidelines and expanded rebate amounts as outlined on the agenda. The household income ranges and the maximum rebate amounts will be, if approved, would then be in alignment with the current Commonwealth of Pennsylvania property tax rent rebate program. Again, all of these items are on the agenda, and I'm happy to answer any questions before you move to it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Saul. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Mr. Jankowski.
I'd like to begin by offering my thanks for the hard work and thoughtfulness that the business office and administration put into this budget, as you do every year. Again, it was a long but very informative process. I personally shudder at the thought of a 4% increase in my taxes, let alone the community's taxes. However, as I said earlier, I have a hard time rationalizing how we can, on one hand, say we want the resources and the support to provide our students and our staff with what's needed to make this a school district that we want it to be, without, in the other hand, acknowledging that there's a cost associated with that. You know, again, almost 90% of our budget's fixed. We can't control those costs. I find nothing frivolous in what was presented to us this year. Again, I think it was very thought out. I do not like the fact of a 4% increase, but at this state, I'm not sure what's feasible if we want this to be the school district that everyone wants it to be. So with that said, I do support this budget this year, and I look forward to the continuing success of our school district. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Any additional comments? Dr. Whitney?
Yeah, I just want to gratefully acknowledge the re-inclusion of the band uniforms into this budget.
Yes.
I think that's a relatively minor but important item, and I hope our young musicians look amazing and enjoy those as they march down the field next fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Whitney. Additional comments? Mr. Flaggy?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Saul, I'd like to thank you as echoing Mr. Jankowski on all the hard work you and your administration have put into this budget. Unfortunately, at this time, I'm not going to be voting yes for this budget. I just cannot keep putting more and more tax burden onto the taxpayer, especially when we sat here and voted on alerta, giving a tax abatement to a wealthy developer to come into the district. So I will be a no.
Thank you, Mr. Flaggy. Additional comments? Ms. Bowman?
Yeah, before I say my comment, I just want to make sure that I have the number right, so that I'm not putting falsehoods out there. Does this budget have a planned deficit of 1.6 million?
Sorry, I just want to look to confirm that. I thought it was slightly lower than that. The deficit's 1.2.
1.2, sorry,
Yep.
I might have had that correct and then remembered it wrong. Okay, thank you. My main issue with this budget is the planned deficit. I understand why we need to raise to the index. Our past decisions have basically come to fruition this year. We need to pay for our contracts that we negotiated. And without the 4% tax increase, we can't do that. But at the same time, we can't raise more than 4%, and you still have this 1.2 million deficit in there, which, as we've seen, carried over several years, is going to bring the fund balance down to zero. And that is the sole reason why I'm not voting for this budget. This shouldn't come as a surprise, because when this first came up several weeks ago, or whenever we first had this discussion, I mentioned it then. And I understand you could take out borrowing to overcome this, and if that was part of the plan and included in the budget, I could go from a no to a yes. But because there's no plan for it, I can't in good conscience say yes to this. What I am asking, I guess, of our board president is if we could split the vote so that we vote on A and then we vote on B, C, and D, because I have no issues with B, C, and D, but I do have an issue with A.
I'll let Bob comment, but I think they're all dependent on one another, the way they're written right now.
Mr. Saul, we're being advised that they're interdependent and should be passed as one unit. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if I guess the point is, if A doesn't pass, we really can't do the following item. So if we do them as a unit and it doesn't pass, it's sort of the same result.
Okay, all right, thank you, I understand.
And may I comment on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So so that structural deficit is directly related to a plan, not unlike when we received $8 million from the federal government, which we set aside or left flow into fund balance, and then over multiple years spent that through deficit spending. When we have, most years, we have, when we end the year in a positive position. And so that continues to grow our fund balance. And so this process addresses two things. It prevents a runaway fund balance, because if you continue to just grow your fund balance but don't manage that, it gets larger. So one, it's a way to manage the fund balance. And two, it's a way to fund the technology infrastructure, which is not a recurring cost, but is a different cost at different time points. Because it may be a major investment this year, somewhat smaller investment the following year, no investment for 2 years, and then we're back to maybe we need to replace all of the Wi-Fi hotspots. And so in the long-range plan, there was a plan laid out for how much would be used from the fund balance, or how much of that deficit would be each year. And while it's 1.63 or 1.16 plus the 55 this year, and that's directly related to the expenditure for technology infrastructure. Next year, that will reduce to 300,000, and again, be directly aligned with the expenditure for technology infrastructure. In 27-28, it will go down to 94,000. In 28-29, 182,000. And in 29-30, actually it goes back up to over $1 million, because again, it's another big spend year. So this is not a structural deficit that is funding something like a salary, which will continue to recur, because that's, I mean, you make a very good point. If you have a structural deficit that's not managed, it will run away from you.
Yeah.
This is a structural deficit that is very methodically planned, scheduled out for future years. And I can show you, not in the documents we have here, but that deficit directly links to an expenditure line item in the budget, which will go away next year and be replaced by a different expenditure line item, which is much smaller. So again, that process is a way of managing our fund balance and doing the technology. So I 100% appreciate your comments with regard to having a structural deficit that is not linked to something, and it's just funding your overall operation. It can get out of control. This is a situation where it's been planned and put in place very methodically. So
I understand that, but when you showed us the charts of the fund balance going to zero, then what was bringing it down to zero? What was coming out of the fund balance? Is that for the building program then that was doing that?
So, in the model that we saw last time,
Yeah.
yes, that was the building program that was putting the debt service in place without taking out the $8 million annual pay-as-you-go,
Okay.
which was causing that to go down. That was creating a structural deficit.
Okay.
Very different from what we see tonight.
That's helpful. I actually, coming into this meeting, thought that we were running a 1.2 million yearly deficit because of the technology plan and adding debt on top of that. So that does clear up a big misconception for me. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the clarification, Mr. Saul. Additional comments, questions from the board? Ms. Ford.
Just again about the band uniforms. Thank you for that. Your explanation that you just made, I believe you had shared that before, correct? I'm pretty sure you shared that same information before.
I did.
Okay.
Sometimes when you say it a different way, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was just making sure. Thank you.
Okay, additional comments? Dr. Whitney.
Quickly, so I just want to explain why I will be voting yes on this budget, and it's given, of course, everyone's hesitation about a 4% tax increase, but I think given the structural realities, we don't really have an option. And although hope is not a plan, based on past performance and past management, of the budgets in this district. It has happened frequently, in fact, maybe every year that I've been on the board, that the end result, we have come out in a better position than we perhaps budgeted for because of good management, because of good stewardship of the funds. And, you know, I'm hopeful that that can be the case again, and that $1.2 million deficit goes away or mostly goes away. So I don't know that, to me, there's not another option given what we have to fund, and that we have to fund our contracts, we have to fund our personnel, we have to fund our amazing teachers and staff all over the district. This is the budget that we have. And so I'll be voting yes. Of course, I don't want to pay the 4% tax increase either. But that is where we are. Just wanted to explain that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Whitney. Additional comments?
Dr. Levinson, if I can just add one more comment with regard to that structural deficit conversation. Unfortunately, the governmental accounting standards in the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the laws of the Commonwealth don't allow us. If you think about what we do with the Capital Reserve Fund, where we actually move money into a separate fund and then we spend it out of there, for technology, there's no mechanism to do that. Because really what we could do is move money out of our fund balance, put it in a separate fund, and spend it out of there, but there's no mechanism. So the best mechanism is to just establish through the committed fund balance, here's an amount that will be used for technology, and that's reflected in our audited financial statements, if you look at those. So that's the other reason that we have taken this approach, is because there's not the mechanism for that we have available to us for other things like infrastructure assets.
Thank you for that. Anything else? Okay, well, I'll just close again. I appreciate the comments from my colleagues. I do express my appreciation to the administration and and some people view a protracted process in terms of trying to, outline where we're going to be financially for the forthcoming year. I appreciate the fact that we do take, these 6 months to review the details and to provide detailed presentations, to the board and to the community to explain the whys and wheres the things are happening. So, the process is detailed, it's informative, it's transparent. But again, we are where we are because of our obligations, and we have to meet those obligations. And again, I do support, what we're going to be doing for the forthcoming year. So if there are no further questions, Ms. Allen would please call the roll for our vote on items A through D.
Mr. Falegi?
No.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Jankowski?
Yes.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. Klotz?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Whitney?
Yes.
Ms. Bowman?
Yes.
Dr. Levinson?
Yes?
8 ayes, 1 nay.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving on to personnel. May I have a motion to approve the personnel agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Are there-
Dr. Levinson,
Yes.
make sure you reference that.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at it right here. Okay, so just take a step back. I did want to announce that an addendum to the personnel agenda was posted to board docs earlier today to add items for additions to the extended school year for 24-25, a supervisor for special education at the middle level, and in addition to the Summer Learning Academy assignments at the high school. So we're now approving all those items together. Should I ask for another motion, or are we good?
No.
All right, we're good. All right, thank you. If there are no comments or questions, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kelly?
Aye.
Ms. Klotz?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Dr. Whitney?
Aye.
Ms. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Falegi?
Aye.
Dr. Levinson?
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Moving on to business operations, if there are no objections, I'd like to, I'm sorry, Dr. Campbell has some comments related to the agenda.
You must have felt my stare. I did want to just briefly recognize the retirement of 3 support staff members who have really been a tremendous asset and very dedicated to our organization. Grant Carter is retiring at the end of this school year after 7 years as an instructional assistant at Emmaus High School. Lisa Shoup is retiring after 26 years as an IA, instructional assistant at Ayer, and Jacqueline Tapler is retiring after 5 years at Willow Lane Elementary School as an IA, as a staff assistant. So we certainly wish them well in their retirement and really appreciate their commitment to the district.
Yes, all right. Thank you, Dr. Campbell, and thank you to our retirees. Okay, now moving on to business operations. If there are no objections, I'd like to take a motion on taking items A through G together.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, before we take a vote, I'd just like to acknowledge the donation from Giant through their continued support of East Penn School District through their Feeding School Kids initiative. Okay, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Jankowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Klotz.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Whitney.
Aye.
Ms. Bowman.
Aye.
Mr. Falegi.
Aye.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Moving on to curriculum, if there are no objections, I'd like to take items A and B together. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Klotz.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Whitney.
Aye.
Ms. Bowman.
Aye.
Mr. Falegi.
Aye.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski.
Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next item on the agenda is policy, third reading for the updates. To my knowledge, there have been no changes since second reading.
Correct.
If there are
No changes.
no changes, I don't think the administration has anything to present on that. In so doing, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Ms. Klotz.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Dr. Whitney.
Aye.
Ms. Bowman.
Aye.
Mr. Falegi.
Aye.
Ms. Ford.
Aye.
Mr. Jankowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye. Aye.
Dr. Levinson.
Aye.
9 ayes.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Next item is other educational entities. For the CLIU and LCTI, you each have 30 seconds for your report.
Do we do them both at the same time?
This is the most important part of the agenda.
All right. Well, item A is CLIU report from Dr. Whitney.
Thank you, Dr. Levinson. CLIU met on May 19th, CLIU Board of Directors. A couple of highlights, a new facility dog. Thrilled to announce the third facility dog will be joining the CLIU. This is, of course, as always, due to the great efforts of the Carmen Lehigh Special Needs Children's Foundation and all the great work that they do. So this is an 18-month-old black Labrador. She will be working out of the CLIU central office and will support itinerant staff working with students who have multiple disabilities. Comes from the same breeder as the CLIU's other 2 facility dogs, so a very trusted breeder. So very exciting announcement, and leads me to another announcement about the Carmen Lehigh Special Needs Children's Foundation, which is that their annual major fundraiser, golf outing, there's still time to get involved. It is on June 17th, so still coming up in about 8 days. If anyone wishes to participate, whether you golf or not, you can donate, you can be part of that, you can go to the clsncf.org website. Couple other matters from the meeting. We heard a report from Dr. Coons on the legislative breakfast that was held on May 8th, which involved a majority of superintendents and 6 area legislators and IU leadership, discussed the pressing issues of school funding reform, cyber charter funding reform, special ed funding, school safety, and recruitment and retention of teachers. So it was an important advocacy event, and glad that the IU participated in that and helped to organize it. A couple of fiscal matters. We approved insurance coverages for the fiscal year 26 with premium increases, across the board increases of 4.7%. To all the insurance policies, which is really not too bad. Also approved the selling of 2 vans from the CLIU's transportation fleet to Northwestern Lehigh School District. They were spares in the fleet, so it won't affect the operations at all. In personnel matters, we approved new benefit policies for CLIU staff for the 26 fiscal year in alignment with recently negotiated collective bargaining agreements. There are increases to benefit payments from staff and also a current indefinite hold on tuition reimbursement payments until a certain period of time has passed when the staff member has been in the CLIU. So again, that was negotiated as part of the recent collective bargaining agreement. And approved some salary increases for non-union CLIU staff, namely 3 positions, Director of Business Services and the Director and Assistant Director of Human Resources, who are not Act 93 employees. Approved salary increases for those positions that are in alignment with Act 93. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Whitney. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Ford.
Do we know the name of the dog?
The dog's name is Gemma.
Thank you.
Gemma with a G.
There you go.
I hope to meet her soon.
All right, well, thank you very much for that. Obviously, lots of great things going on at CLIU. Moving on to a report on LCTI from Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Levinson. The Joint Operating Committee of LCTI met on May 28th, and that concludes my report. Just kidding. During the meeting, we recognized our career and technical student organization members preparing for national conferences, including HOSA delegates bound for Nashville, June 18th to 21st, Skills USA competitors headed to Atlanta the end of June, 23rd to the 23rd to the 28th, and FBLA representatives traveling to Anaheim, California, June 27th to July 3rd. During the administrative update, we welcomed Jordan Caprio as school-based behavior therapist and Thespina Gottschalk as administrator of school-based behavioral health from LVHN, as they shared with us a recap of some of the supports offered through LVHN's behavioral health programming. There were 33 referrals this year overall, with the top 3 reasons for the referral being anxiety, depression, and attention issues. Their assessment data showed that 45% of students reported a decrease in the impact of the problem on their everyday life and a 25% increase in hope for the future from the start of the treatment. We celebrated several achievements. First, Dr. Taylor Lindsay's graduation. He's an instructor at LCTI. Graduated from Wilmington University's Organizational Leadership and Innovation in Education program. Dr. Matthew Link's Cooperative Leadership Award that he won from the Lehigh University School Study Council. And Mr. Greg Merchlinsky's appointment to the Education Board for the Industrial Manufacturing Technician Apprenticeship Program. And finally, we also celebrated 2 students who earned top 20 honors in DECA's International Career Development Conference Food Operations event. We examined data and trends, noting stable overall enrollment, gains in student diversity, high Perkins concentrator rates, and alignment of programs with high priority industry occupations. Discussion also included potential Perkins funding changes, such as apprenticeship expansion and an AI-focused workforce strategy, and opportunities to expand apprenticeships, integrate AI into curricula, and grow dual credit offerings. The strategic planning update outlined Phase 1 completion through May, covering stakeholder surveys and focus groups, and previewed Phase 2 activities for June through August, including meetings with businesses, community, and local leaders, preparation of the State of LCTI report, and drafting of the comprehensive plan leading into a strategic planning event scheduled for September. And that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Any comments or questions from the board? Lots of great things going on at LCTI as well. Okay, next item is announcements. The board met in executive session this evening to talk about topics related to safety and security and also litigation. Our next regular board meeting is 2 weeks from today on June 23rd, Monday at 7:30 in this room. With no further business before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Come on, another couple hours? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much. See you in 2 weeks.